Chapter 1539. In the capital of the Xiai divine dynasty, in the majestic imperial palace, the divine emperor sat in his throne, his brows furrowed, as if he was troubled by something. He had just transcended his heaven god tribulation, which should have been a joyous occasion. But for him, there was something even more troubling. Although Bufang had said that they each had their own needs, of course, he could not think so. Bufang was injured because of him, and his cooking utensils were destroyed in order to resist the heaven god's palm. This made him feel a little guilty. Sitting on the throne, he leaned sideways and touched his chin. Without the threat of the tribulation, he had taken some spirit herbs and suppressed his aging body. Now, he was in the mood to think about something else. Xiao Fu, go and summon King Pingyang to me. The divine emperor thought for a moment, then turned to a young eunuch standing respectfully to the side. The eunuch paused, then bowed slightly and walked out of the imperial palace. After using a special voice transmission method, King Pingyang came at high speed. King Pingyang was a little excited. He was flattered that the first person the divine emperor met after transcending the tribulation was him. Bu Pingyang, you have a good relationship with Mr. Bu. I'm giving you an order now. Cough, cough, the divine emperor said, looking at Hu Pingyang. Please tell me, Your Majesty. I'll do it even at the cost of my old life. Hu Pingyang bowed. Well, Mr. Bu's cooking utensils were destroyed because of me, and I feel a little guilty. I'm giving you money now. You will collect the best cooking utensils in the divine dynasty for Mr. Bu. Even if it's a heaven divine chef's cooking utensils, you can buy them with money and send them to Mr. Bu, the divine emperor said. He paid a lot of attention to Bufang. He was a man Mu Hongzi valued and had saved him once. He was not stingy with money. King Pingyang paused. He did not expect the divine emperor to value Bufang so much. However, it was easy to get things done with money. Of course, it was difficult to find the best cooking utensils from a heaven divine chef. But if he could not get them, he would just have to spend money. The divine dynasty had plenty of money. In the Luo family's skyscraper, in the kitchen of the restaurant, Bufang clasped his hands behind his back and sighed. He grabbed the dragon bone saber. The dragon bone saber that was originally shining with golden light and would let out dragon roars when he held it was now dull and lifeless. It had lost the divine light of the past and was like a broken kitchen knife. With a thought, Zhang Xian's divine sense surged. He sent his divine sense into the dragon bone kitchen knife. Buzzed, the dragon bone kitchen knife glowed. Catch him? The expression on Bufang's face suddenly froze, and he quickly stopped injecting his divine sense. Looking at the new crack on the dragon bone kitchen knife, which looked like it was about to break into pieces, the corners of his mouth twitched. This time, it was really a huge blow to his vitality. In the spirit sea, the originally lively 4 artifact spirits had already fallen into a deep slumber in the mist. No matter how he tried, he couldn't summon him. The usually lively spirit sea was now extremely quiet, although the heavenly god's palm was terrifyingly powerful. For Bufang, it was a great blow. However, because of the existence of the god of cooking's menu, Bufang's spirit sea was still very safe. It was a pity that the artifact spirits were missing. He was not used to the absence of the artifact spirits. System, is there any way to repair the god of cooking sets? Bufang asked the system with a sigh. However, the system did not give him a reply. Obviously, it was also having a headache about this matter. It could not be repaired with divine sense, and if it went in, it could easily cause the god of cooking sets to collapse again. What should he do? Bufang was very distressed. He could not think of a way for the time being. Bufang put away the kitchen utensils. He furrowed his brows, and his eyes became a little serious. With a thought, he began to check the situation in his body. Although the heaven god's palm was offset, the aftermath still existed in Bufang's body. The heaven god is awesome. Bufang twitched the corner of his mouth, narrowed his eyes slightly, and a cold light surged in them. An invisible force was constantly destroying Bufang's body. However, with the heaven god's bone, his body was temporarily in a stable state, withstanding the damage caused by the energy. But now, Bufang looked like an ordinary person and ordinary meant useless. The power of the heaven god was like maggots attached to the bone. Buzz Bufong focused his eyes. The next moment his mind flickered. A seven-colored fruit appeared in his hand. It was the fruit of law. After completing the task, Bufong received the reward of the fruit of law. For Bufong, it was a timely rain. A fruit of law should be able to let Bufong comprehend another law. Moreover, it was very likely to be the supreme law of the universe. Bufong even wondered if he could summon some miracle to help the kitchen utensils recover if he gathered all 5 supreme laws of the universe. Bufong grabbed the 7-colored fruit. Bufong opened his mouth and bit it. With a slurping sound, juice splashed everywhere. As soon as the fruit entered his mouth, it slid into Bufong's mouth. Buzz, it was a familiar feeling and a familiar process. It was also the sea of law. Bufong walked slowly in the sea of law. Following the routine, Bufong came to the depths of the sea of law. Their strong aura of the law spread. Buzz, Bufong felt that he had gotten used to it. A beam of light surged. Bufong opened his eyes. There were no ripples, and he was as calm as drinking water. Just like that, he comprehended one supreme law of the universe. He had comprehended 4 supreme laws of the universe. Bufong's heart was calm, without the slightest emotion. He was used to it. If this matter were known by others, it would cause a huge uproar. Since ancient times, who had comprehended so many supreme laws of the universe? Comprehending 4 supreme laws of the universe could no longer be called a genius. Comprehending 3 supreme laws of the universe was enough to shock the entire chaotic universe. Comprehending 4 supreme laws, it was too terrifying. Of course, now, no one knew that Bufong had comprehended 4 supreme laws of the universe. Now, he was no longer as surprised and excited as he was before. He was as calm as if he had just drunk a glass of water. Frowning, Bufong raised his hand. The profound power of the law surged out of his palm. This time, it was the law of life. It was unexpected, but it made sense. The supreme laws Hades' era comprehended gave Era the ability to resist beatings. Buzz Bufong's heart skipped a beat. The law of life immediately spread out and permeated his body. He wanted to expel the heaven god's power from his body. However, he did not seem to succeed, but he managed to suppress the heaven god's power that made him ache. Forget it. I'll take it slow. Bufong felt a little regretful. So what if he had comprehended 4 supreme laws of the universe? His god of cooking sets could not be recovered. Even cooking had become tasteless. Bufong sighed. He found that he had become a little sentimental recently. The destruction of the god of cooking sets made him very sad. He took out the ingredients one by one. Then he washed and cut them. Bufong could not use the power in his body or condense cooking utensils with his true energy. He could only cook with the basic utensils prepared by the system in the kitchen. Gurgle. Inside the wok, the oil was glistening and bubbling. Bufong put the dragon ribs into the wok. Sizzle. White foam was bubbling up. Bufong grabbed a pair of chopsticks and stirred them. After a while, he fished the ribs out and put them into a blue and white porcelain bowl. He sprinkled seasonings, poured in the sweet and sour sauce, and began to stir. Before long, a steaming bowl of sweet and sour dragon ribs was ready. Bufong held the sweet and sour dragon ribs and sniffed the aroma. He let out a deep sigh. Alas, without the cooking utensils, he could not cook well. It was as if he was used to driving a luxury car and suddenly gave up driving a van. He always felt a little sad and sad. Holding the sweet and sour ribs, Bufong walked out of the kitchen. In the restaurant, everyone's spirits were suddenly lifted. This smell, it's the smell of sweet and sour ribs. Lord Go's eyes lit up. He stood up under the Pathfinder standing tree, the fat on his body jiggling. His figure flashed, and he came to a chair. His dog paw rested on the table, looking a little impatient. Bufong placed the sweet and sour ribs in front of Lord Go. Eat, eat, Bufong said. Lord Go's mouth was full of saliva. It was his favorite sweet and sour ribs. Chomp, chomp. Without hesitation, Lord Go buried his head in the sweet and sour ribs and began to eat. Bufong, young man, cheer up. You are the man who wants to become the god of cooking. Spiritual pursuit should be higher than material pursuit. No one knew when Hades' era had come to Bufong's side, saying seriously. Bufong glanced at Hades' era, slightly twitching his mouth. What you said makes sense. From today on, your spicy strips will be gone. Bufong said seriously. Hades' era's face froze. We still need to pursue the necessary material life. Bufong, young man, I feel sorry for your experience. Let's be sad and sad together. Hades' era raised his hand, covering half of his face. His eyes were filled with indescribable sorrow. Pretentious. Bufong looked at Hades' era, almost spitting out the word get lost. Without the god of cooking set, life had to go on. However, the restaurant's business was better because of that. Perhaps it was because of Bufong's fame or the divine emperor's promotion. The restaurant's business had become more and more popular. Before dawn, long and narrow lines were already lined up. The top floor of the Luo family skyscraper was crowded with people. Bufong's turnover, on the other hand, had increased a lot. Looking at the rising turnover, Bufong's sad mood eased a little. The Titan Divine Emperor had returned to the Titan Divine Dynasty. He had carried out a major reform. When the news reached the Shai Divine Emperor's ears, he couldn't help but frown. Had the Titan Divine Dynasty come to the Shai Divine Dynasty? Although the calamity was over, the Shai Divine Emperor did not relax at all. He knew that there were still terrible disasters waiting for him. Those terrible creatures were multiplying faster and faster. Like a dark demon, they kept growing stronger and stronger, as if they were about to turn into a terrible storm at any time, bringing a great storm and disaster to the whole chaotic universe. The Divine Emperor of the Immortal Spirit Divine Dynasty sent another emissary group to discuss the terrible creatures. They even brought the news back to the Immortal Spirit Divine Dynasty. Now, the three Divine Dynasties had entered a state of alert. The Titan Divine Dynasty had built a line of defense to prevent the people of the Immortal Spirit Divine Dynasty and the Shai Divine Dynasty from probing and entering. It was as if they had completely sealed off the Divine Dynasty. This strangeness puzzled both the Immortal Spirit Divine Dynasty and the Shai Divine Dynasty. However, they were just puzzled. According to the news they had received, the Titan Divine Emperor's warship was attacked by terrible creatures on his way to the Shai Divine Dynasty. Many experts on the warship were killed, and Taishan, their general, died in the starry sky. Only the Divine Emperor returned. This caused the whole Divine Dynasty to be filled with grief. King Pingyang's face was beaming with excitement. He came to the Luo family skyscraper. He squeezed through the crowds and headed toward the Luo family skyscraper. Before long, he was in front of the restaurant. He entered the restaurant, not to eat, but to look for Bufong. The Divine Emperor had asked him to collect top-grade cooking utensils. After working hard for some time, he finally completed the collection. With his glib tongue, he persuaded those divine chefs and spent a lot of money to collect these top-grade cooking utensils. Some of these utensils were from top Earth Divine chefs. Some were from Heaven Divine chefs. These utensils were all the best cooking utensils in the Shai Divine Dynasty, and they were the best even in the chaotic universe. This should be enough to make up for Mr. Boo's grief. Oh, Bufong wiped his hands with a clean white cloth. He walked out of the kitchen. Puzzled, he looked at the excited King Pingyang. What do you want from me? Bufong asked. King Pingyang looked at Bufong gently and said, I have something good to show you, Mr. Boo. Don't blink, Mr. Boo. King Pingyang rubbed his hands, then his mind flickered. Immediately, a dazzling light burst out of his hand. A dazzling azure kitchen knife appeared in front of him. A rich aura pervaded the air. It was a top-grade kitchen knife. This is a cooking utensils His Majesty bought from a Heaven Divine chef at a cost of 1,000,000 source stones to make up for Mr. Boo's grief, King Pingyang said. Everyone's eyes were drawn to it. The kitchen knife was so beautiful that it dazzled him. This kitchen knife was too beautiful. It was so beautiful that it dazzled him. Bufong paused. Make up for me? This kitchen knife. Bufong narrowed his eyes. Then, he reached out a hand and grabbed the blue kitchen knife. Rumble. As soon as he held the knife, Bufong seemed to feel a blue whale's artifact spirit roaring at him. Oh, you're just an artifact spirit, and you want to be naughty with me? Bufong's divine sense surged faintly. The true form of the divine sense, sitting cross-legged on the god of cooking's menu, opened its eyes in an instant, and the pressure containing the god of cooking's aura exploded out. A beam of light stared straight at the blue whale's artifact spirit. Slash! The blue whale's roar stopped abruptly. Then, without daring to let out a fart, it slowly dissipated like a bubble. King Pingyang looked at Bufong expectantly. Suddenly, his face froze. He found that the blue kitchen knife in Bufong's hand was full of cracks. Damn it, that's my 1,000,000 source stones. King Pingyang shuddered inwardly, and he wanted to roar. His old bones seemed to make cracking sounds, and he felt the pain in his heart. Chapter 1540. In the Titan Divine Dynasty, in the towering imperial palace, the architectural style of the Titan Divine Dynasty was tall and magnificent. Because the people of the Titan Divine Dynasty would grow their bodies at the slightest disagreement, their buildings were basically very tall. On a high seat in the Great Hall of the Imperial Palace, the Titan Divine Emperor sat cross-legged on it. All the people in the palace had been dismissed. It seemed to have turned into a secret place. There was a faint black aura lingering in the palace. The terrifying black aura spread, as though it was corroding the void. After a long time, the Titan Divine Emperor opened his eyes. The corners of his mouth curved upward into an evil smile. You're indeed a God Emperor expert. You're really strong. You can't let me devour you completely. However, you won't be able to hold on for long. There was a hint of coldness in the Titan Divine Emperor's mouth. He raised a hand, and black smoke swirled in his palm. The barbaric glyphs on his body had turned black. With the Divine Dynasty as the foundation, if we turn the whole Divine Dynasty into a paradise for soul demons, we will soon occupy this world. At that time, we will summon the soul god's will to descend, and we will become the masters of this world again. Humans will become our food. The Titan Divine Emperor smiled greedily, his eyes filled with black smoke. Of course, he was still paying attention to the news of the cursed goddess and Bufong. The cursed goddess's fleshly body was still a great temptation for him. Back then, he had occupied the Titan Divine Emperor's fleshly body and was qualified to break through to the soul overlord realm. Unfortunately, the Titan Divine Emperor was a god emperor after all, and he had withstood the corrosion. Otherwise, he would have gone to the Shai Divine Dynasty and captured the cursed goddess and Bufong. However, after sensing the aura of a heaven god, he followed his heart. Especially after he lost contact with Soul 2 and Soul 3, he became even more cautious. He didn't want to lose the fleshly body he had worked so hard to obtain. So, he returned to the Titan Divine Dynasty. As the Titan Divine Emperor, he would take charge of this divine dynasty. When he successfully became a soul overlord, he would destroy this world. Once he became a soul overlord, who could stop him? The Empress of the Immortal Spirit Divine Dynasty could not, let alone the old man of the Shai Divine Dynasty. Crack! The blue kitchen knife shattered. They fell to the ground and scattered everywhere. Bufong felt somewhat innocent. He looked at the kitchen knife in his hand, not knowing what had happened. Were kitchen utensils so fragile now? Compared to the god of cooking set, the difference was too big. Oh, the god of cooking set was also broken. It was so painful that it was hard to breathe. Bufong patted his chest. A million origin stones. King Pingyang's heart was trembling. He glanced at Bufong and wanted to cry. This is the cooking utensil of a heaven divine chef. Why is it so fragile? Could it be that this old man was deceived? That bold chef actually dared to deceive I. Bufong put down the kitchen knife and sighed. It's okay. Who hasn't met a few scammers in life? Just be careful next time, Bufong said. King Pingyang's face kept twitching. He felt that he could not keep his face. The divine emperor didn't give him funds to feed the swindlers. Don't worry, Mr. Boo. I prepared a lot of cooking utensils. Look at this. King Pingyong took a deep breath. He shook his hand. A crimson wok emerged in front of him. The pot was filled with terrifying heat, like a boiling volcano. Oh, this wok. Bufong reached out a hand and grabbed the wok. Immediately, Bufong felt the aura of the artifact spirit in the wok. Roar. It was a roaring magma giant standing on top of a volcano. A terrible aura spread. Oh. Bufong narrowed his eyes slightly. Was the true form of the divine sense opened its eyes again. The true form of the divine sense in the god of cooking's menu had a threatening aura. A beam of golden light shot out of it. The lava giant's roar came to an abrupt stop. With a ripping sound, it was pierced by the golden light. It shattered and fell to the ground. At the same time, King Pingyong felt that his beard was about to fall off. Bufong grabbed the crimson wok, which immediately emitted a dazzling radiance. Then, cracks appeared on the wok. It shattered and fell to the ground. Yes, it was so fragile that it broke like glass. What the F***, CK? My millions of source stones. King Pingyong's heart was bleeding. He glanced at the innocent Bufong. He didn't know what to say. The people around him were also a little confused. Looking at the kitchen utensils that broke in his hand, they were somewhat speechless. Is this King Pingyong a clown invited by the divine emperor? Owner Boo's cooking skills are superb. Do you think those lousy things can fool Owner Boo? King Pingyong didn't believe it. He took out one kitchen utensil after another. However, they were all broken and fell to the ground. Every time one of them broke, King Pingyong's heart trembled. That meant that the shining dawn stones were about to leave him. Should he ask those divine chefs for them? Mr. Boo, I'm sorry to disturb you. I'm a little upset now. I'll show you the kitchen utensils tomorrow. King Pingyong's face was unsightly. After bidding farewell to Bufong, he turned and left in a hurry. Bufong touched his hand and smacked his lips. Alas, the god of cooking set is still easier to use. I wonder how to fix it. Buzz, suddenly, the system's serious voice rang in Bufong's head. The look in Bufong's eyes changed. He glanced at the crowd, then turned and went into the kitchen. System, do you have a solution? Bufong asked excitedly. Yes. The system's answer was concise. I didn't expect the system to answer so seriously. What is it? Bufong asked. Without the handy kitchen utensils, it's meaningless to cook now. The system fell silent for a moment. Host, please complete the collection of the last god of cooking set first. The system's voice was serious. Bufong's face was expressionless. And then the system fell silent. Bufong and the system looked at each other, speechless. That's it, Bufong asked. That's it, the system said. Bufong was speechless. What kind of solution is this? If you want to know what will happen next, please listen to the next part. Did the system have this kind of trick? However, Bufong understood that perhaps the recovery of the god of cooking set was related to the last piece. Moreover, in that misty space, Bufong could feel that the last artifact spirit was definitely a big boss. Now, it seemed that it was very important to collect the fragments of the god of cooking set. To summon the last god of cooking set, he only needed one more fragment. Bufong rubbed his chin. However, it was not easy to collect the last fragment. Bufong furrowed his brows. He had to wait for the system to issue a temporary task. Or, he had to complete enough turnover. As long as he could complete enough turnover, he could level up, and his cultivation base could even break through to the god realm. At this moment, Bufong was eager to improve his cultivation base. The pressure from the heaven god made him very uncomfortable. Host, please note that you have not cooked a dish from the god of cooking's menu. The system issued a prompt. Bufong paused. The system's prompt reminded him that he still had a dish from the god of cooking's menu. He had been so busy that he had forgotten about it. However, without the god of cooking set, could he really cook it? Bufong furrowed his brows. The system had given him a solution that was not really a solution. So, in a short time, it was impossible for Bufong to have the god of cooking set. However, Bufong could not change this fact. This startled Buffon. It seemed that he had relied too much on the god of cooking set. This dependence made Buffon frown a little. The business continued. The restaurant was bustling as usual, and the diners left happily after eating their fill. Source stones kept flowing into Buffon's pocket, increasing his turnover. It seemed that Buffon was getting closer and closer to the next level. It had been a busy day. When the last diner was sent off, Buffon breathed a sigh of relief. Wiping the water stains on his hands, he walked out of the kitchen. Leaning against the counter, his eyes were a little pensive. Losing the god of cooking set made Buffon more immersed in cooking. It was a rare feeling. It had been a long time since Buffon had such a feeling of calming down and studying cooking. He was holding a bowl of dragon blood rice, eating. Her big eyes looked at Buffon, as if she could feel that Buffon was a little different than usual. It seems like I haven't released a new dish for a long time. Buffon rubbed his chin, thinking. When you saw that Buffon seemed to have come out of the grief of losing his cooking utensils, her eyes brightened. With the dragon blood rice stuffed in her mouth, she nodded repeatedly. Indeed, there was no new dish. Could it be that Buffon wanted to create a new dish? Something delicious to eat? Hades Era and the others also looked over. Buffon expressionlessly glanced at them, then turned around and went into the kitchen. "Wait for me," Buffon said. Then, he went into the kitchen and began to cook a new dish. The crowd was suddenly a little curious. The Crown Prince froze for a moment. He, who had planned to end today's task and leave the restaurant, couldn't help but stop. He wanted to see what new dish Buffon would prepare. Recently, while he was busy working as a waiter, he was also working hard to collect life-prolonging spirit herbs for his father. His time was precious. However, every time he saw the crowd's expectant eyes, he couldn't help but be a little infected. "I'll wait. Anyway, it won't be a loss to wait. I'll just take it as a vacation." In the kitchen, Buffon furrowed his brows. He rolled up his sleeves, reached out a finger, and touched his chin. In his spirit sea, the pages of the god of cooking's menu began to turn. Rumbling sounds rang out, and light shot in all directions. Buzz, a stream of information, surged out of the god of cooking's menu and was received by Buffon. That was the name of the new dish. A new dish from the god of cooking's menu. Every time a dish from the god of cooking's menu came out, it was a great challenge for Buffon. This time was no exception. There was a lot of information in the menu, and it filled Buffon's head as if it was going to burst it. Buffon opened his mouth and exhaled slightly. His pupils constricted, and his face became a little strange. He really didn't expect that such a dish would appear in the god of cooking's menu. This dish can also be included? Could the guy who created the god of cooking's menu be a fellow countryman? Buffon didn't know whether to laugh or cry. There seemed to be something in this last dish. The dish in the god of cooking's menu was called the supreme cola chicken wings. Chapter 1541. Cola chicken wings? The corner of Buffon's mouth twitched slightly. This thing could also become a dish in the god of cooking's menu? Putting everything else aside, cola, what should he do with this thing? Did he have to make it? Buffon felt that this god of cooking's menu was getting more and more interesting. Could also be a fellow countryman from Earth? Cola. Perhaps it was only available on Earth. However, thinking of cola, Buffon couldn't help but miss that taste. It was an incomparably sour and refreshing taste. It was a strange, sour and numb feeling on his tongue. But the information in the recipe kept pouring into Buffon's mind. The cooking method of cola chicken wings made Buffon fall into deep thought. With his hands clasped behind his back, Buffon sorted out the memories in his mind, smoothing them out. Cooking. Buffon wasn't in a hurry. He took his time. Right now, he wasn't in a hurry. System, this cola, how should I solve it? Buffon asked the system in his mind. The system didn't give Buffon a quick reply. It should be thinking about it. After a while, the system's serious voice rang out. Then, a rumbling sound rang out. Buffon's eyes lit up. With a shake of his hand, portions of ingredients appeared in front of him. Finally, with a ringing sound, a plastic box appeared, smashing in front of Buffon. The ice cubes collided with each other, making a tinkling sound. An icy chill hit him in the face. Bufong's eyes slightly narrowed. He stared at the plastic box in front of him. The box was red, with ice cubes inside. These ice cubes were extremely cold. Even with his current physical body, he still felt a cold feeling brushing against his face. This is cola? And it's iced? Bufong felt a little funny. He touched his lips, reached out his hand, and grabbed a bottle of cola in the box. This cola was stored in a crystal jar. The cola inside was dark brown, which somewhat overlapped with the cola in his previous life. The top of the cola was covered with a cap. It was the kind of beer cap that had to be opened with a special screwdriver. The system was very considerate. Beside the box, there was a special screwdriver. Bufong was not in a hurry to open the can. Bufong looked at the Coke carefully. It didn't have a logo, which was normal. If the system gave him a box of Coca-Cola or Pepsi, Bufong would also find it weird and comical. However, Coca-Cola should be pure. Bufong's eyes narrowed as he grabbed the crystal bottle. The cold sensation coming from the bottle made Bufong feel as if he was in an icy snow mountain. Grabbing the handle, Bufong pressed it against the seal. Then, he raised his eyebrows. Chi! A melodious sound of air waves resounded. The calm liquid in the crystal bottle suddenly began to boil, and white steam began to spread. Poochie poochie. Bubbles kept bursting out. Pure cola. The corners of Bufong's mouth twitched slightly, as if he couldn't wait. Grabbing the bottle, Bufong gulped down a mouthful of it. Gulp! Chi! A mouthful of cola went into his mouth, and the sour taste made Bufong's scalp go numb. It was a taste from the depths of his memory. It was the taste of his previous life on Earth. But compared to the taste in his memory, the feeling at this moment was so real. It was so real that Bufong's mouth trembled. Cola. It was really cola. One gulp, and it chilled his heart. The iced cola was even more sour and refreshing. In one gulp, he drank half of the bottle. The cola in the bottle was bubbling with light brown foam. Taking a deep breath, Bufong narrowed his eyes. He began to feel and prepare his emotions. After drinking the cola, he had to prepare his emotions. Opening his mouth, a rhythmic burp came from his throat. If he didn't burp after drinking the cola, what was the difference between him and a salted fish? This mouthful of cola was extremely refreshing, as if all his worries had been abandoned. It made Bufong a little happy. A familiar feeling could always soothe a wounded heart. Bufong continued to drink, finishing the whole bottle of cola. His whole body seemed to be floating. The burp was full of spiritual energy. Not bad, not bad. Bufong seemed to be looking forward to the moment the cola chicken wings were born. Besides the cola, the system had prepared other ingredients. On the other side, there were 9 wings. The fat wings were very meaty, which seemed to increase one's appetite. As a matter of fact, cola chicken wings were not a high-end dish. If one had to say, it might be a dish of a pretty girl from a humble family. However, it was a very interesting dish. Of course, it was also very delicious. Bufong grabbed the chicken wings and began to wash them with the spring of life. After washing the chicken wings, he fished them out, placed them on a porcelain plate, and began to marinate them. The marinating process was actually a process of bringing out the flavor. Pouring wine and some soy sauce into the porcelain plate, as well as many spices, he began to marinate the chicken wings. This way, the flavor could perfectly penetrate into the chicken wings. Moreover, during the marinating process, as for Bufong, he would wrap his palm with spirit energy and use it to massage and stir the chicken wings. This process required Bufong's divine sense. He needed to feel the degree of the seasoning penetrating into the chicken wings, and he needed to control that degree to the right extent. Too much or too little would affect the taste of cola chicken wings. Of course, this dish was mainly cola because the cola would be dyed and seasoned. After marinating the chicken wings, what Bufong needed to do was to start cooking. The difficulty of this dish wasn't high. For Bufong, it should be very easy. Of course, now that he had lost the god of cooking set, it would be very difficult to cook well. What Bufong used was the basic kitchen utensils provided by the system. In front of the stove, Bufong took out the kitchen knife from the knife rack. In the beginning, Bufong also used this kitchen knife. But since he got the dragon bone knife, Bufong rarely used it. This made Bufong a little nostalgic. His hand shook, and his index finger hooked the handle of a knife, making it spin in his hand. Then he cut some sun-mother ginger and other seasonings. Bufong began to prepare to cook. His index finger and thumb gently rubbed. Suddenly, a ball of silver flame burst out and burned in his hand. With a flick of his finger, the flame shot out, shooting into the distance. It fell under the stove. With a boom, a scorching heat spread out. This was the divine flame, which had absorbed the power of countless laws. The temperature of this divine flame had reached a level that made people's scalps numb. Boom! For a moment, the atmosphere was still. The black wok prepared by the kitchen burned a hole in it the moment the divine flame landed on it. Bufong, the system gave Bufong another wok. This time, Bufong learned to control the divine flame's temperature. After all, not every wok could withstand the divine flame's temperature. Half a wok was filled with oil. Shortly after, the golden oil began to boil under the high temperature. Thick oil and gas filled the air. He took out the marinated chicken wings, put them into a wok of oil, and covered them with oil. As soon as they were put in the wok, the chicken wings were covered with white oil. Soon, the grease dispersed. The chicken wings turned golden. Bufong used his chopsticks to pick up the golden fried chicken wings, placing them on a round blue and white porcelain plate. Then, he placed them in a circle. The chicken wings emitted steam. He poured away the oil in the wok, leaving a little bit of the oil boiling and splashing. Bufong poured the sun-mother ginger and scale-tail scallion into the wok and began to stir-fry. After the aroma came out, he put in the chicken wings one by one, shaking the wok, stir-frying. Bufong was very skilled at this. Sizzle, sizzle. The chicken wings tumbled and spun in the wok. Bufong's divine sense surged, locking on the black wok and controlling the divine flame. He wanted to control everything. After all, the kitchen utensils today were not the god of cooking set. They were very fragile. After shaking the wok, Bufong calmed down a lot. He didn't shake the wok anymore to prevent damaging the chicken wing surface. However, the aroma of the chicken had already spread. He took a deep breath. Bufong's face became more serious. He could already feel an enormous pressure, and this pressure caused Bufong to involuntarily turn serious. Sizzle, Bufong opened a bottle of Coke. He also needed to control the amount of Coke he used. It couldn't be too much or too little. This required the chef's experience. In fact, it was recorded in the recipe, but it was a little abstract. After all, the actual cooking and the recipe would be different. Sizzle. He poured the Coke. In a flash, a sizzling sound arose. A strong aroma filled the air. White steam rose from the wok. Bufong took the lid and covered the black wok. Gurgle. In the kitchen, a muffled sound kept ringing. That was the sound of the ingredients changing. Bufong gently exhaled. He took a step back. Then, he opened another can of Coke. Sizzle. The sound rang out. Bufong grabbed the crystal bottle and poured the Coke into his mouth. Gurgle. As the Coke poured into his mouth, Bufong's spirit was instantly refreshed. His divine sense seemed to be a little stronger. This feeling was very strange. Bufong's eyes were a little dim, as if he was drunk. Drowning his sorrows with Coke, Bufong faintly twitched the corner of his mouth. He took another sip of Coke. He opened the lid. Boom! Horrible hot air suddenly gushed out, and the impact of the air waves made people feel a sense of sourness. A sweet aroma immediately filled the air, refreshing and intoxicating. Bufong couldn't help but narrow his eyes and take a deep breath. He hadn't even tasted the chicken wings, but he seemed to feel a chicken flying. Before it entered his mouth, he could see everything. It was indeed a delicacy from the god of cooking's menu. He wondered what effect this Coke chicken wings had. The next few steps were the most critical. Bufong focused his eyes. He had to be very careful with the next step. After all, these kitchen utensils were not god of cooking sets. If he was not careful, he might break them. At that time, he would be destroying a dish. Bufong took a sip of Coke. The stimulation made his scalp go numb. His eyes narrowed. Then he shook his hand. Above his head, the wheel of law emerged. The law of life, the law of transmigration, the law of destruction, the law of space, the four supreme laws of the universe surged, driven by Bu Fong's divine sense, and seeped into the wok. They blended into the dish. The chicken wings were glowing. They shone brilliantly. They seemed to be able to shake everything, causing the void to shake. Rumble, at the top of the Luo family's skyscraper. A rumbling sound rang out. It was the sound of oppressive thunder. Pitch-black clouds continued to sweep over, covering the sky and covering the sky. Purple thunderbolts rolled in the clouds. The terrifying pressure caused people to feel terrified. In the imperial kitchen in the depths of the palace, an old man walked slowly out with his hands clasped behind his back. His face was extremely old, and his eyes narrowed as he looked at the thunderbolts. "This is the dish's lightning punishment." The old man took a deep breath. "That direction. Is it the chef who saved the divine emperor? A lightning punishment of this level has reached the level of a heaven divine chef." In the divine chef temple, one divine chef after another raised their heads and looked in that direction in disbelief. As divine chefs, they were no strangers to lightning punishments. However, the Xiai divine dynasty's level was much higher than that of the great worlds. It was extremely difficult to trigger the Xiai divine dynasty's lightning punishment. Is His Excellency cooking? This lightning punishment is so strong. Many divine chefs clicked their tongues. All of a sudden, they were curious about the dish Bu Fong was cooking. The appearance of such a phenomenon attracted the attention of all the experts in Xiai divine dynasty's capital. Outside the Luo family's skyscraper, many experts gathered. In the restaurant, Hades era, Lord Go Yu, and the Crown Prince, they were already intoxicated by the sea of fragrance. What kind of fragrance is that? It was indescribable. Rumble. The arena rumbled, and a purple thunder dragon shot down from the sky, tearing the sky. In the kitchen, a figure walked slowly out of the kitchen, holding a blue and white porcelain plate in one hand. In the other hand, he was holding a bottle of Coke and pouring it into his mouth. The Supreme Coke chicken wings are done. Burp. Chapter 1542. What's that? Hades era twitched his nose, but when he heard Bu Fong's words, he was slightly taken aback. Cola chicken wings. What's that? I've never heard of it before. Is this the new dish Bu Fong young man has researched? That's possible. The strange, sweet aroma that filled the air made people feel as if their pores were about to explode. It was a feeling that they had never felt before. It was just like when they smelled the spicy strip. The aroma seemed to be engraved in the depths of their souls. It was not only Hades era. You, Lord Go, and the Crown Prince were all dumbfounded. It smells so good. The Crown Prince took a deep breath. As the Crown Prince of the Divine Dynasty, he had tasted countless dishes. He had even tasted the dishes cooked by the Heaven Divine chefs in the Imperial kitchen for the Divine Emperor. However, even the dishes cooked by that Heaven Divine chef did not have such an enchanting aroma as the one he was eating today. It was an ecstatic aroma that seemed to devour one's bones. Gulp. The Crown Prince's Adam's apple bobbed, and he swallowed. The eyes of you and Lord Go had already lit up. They were very excited about Bu Fong's new dish. Supreme Cola chicken wings. Burp. Holding the plate, Bu Fong burped, his face flushed. His face was flushed as if he was drunk. Rumble. Thunder rumbled. The purple thunderbolt turned into a thunder dragon and shot down from the sky, as if to tear the sky apart. It was extremely terrifying. A terrible rumble shook heaven and earth. Bu Fong held the blue and white porcelain plate. He walked calmly. Was inside the restaurant. A clanging sound rang out. Xiao Bai's mechanical eyes flashed. The flag behind him fluttered as he rushed out of the restaurant and toward the thunderbolt. He collided with the thunderbolt. Boom! A terrible rumble exploded. In the dark night, the thunderbolt looked as bright as day. The dazzling scene was dazzling. However, none of this was the focus of the few people in the restaurant. Their focus was on Bu Fong's hand, on the blue and white porcelain plate. There was light shining on it. The Crown Prince also stopped what he was doing and walked to the table unconsciously. He squeezed around the dining table with Hades era. Usually he despised neither king air this clown. However, for some unknown reason, he was willing to squeeze with him today. Perhaps this was the temptation of delicacies. To be able to taste delicious food. What's wrong with squeezing with this clown? Don't worry. Bufong glanced at the crowd and saw that they were all very impatient. Bufong said faintly. He placed the blue and white porcelain plate on the dining table. The radiance it emitted attracted everyone's attention. Finally, everyone could see it clearly. On the blue and white porcelain plate were pieces of chicken wings. The chicken wings were brownish gold in color and covered with a layer of sticky brown sauce. The sauce flowed slowly, emitting steam and fragrance. What's the name of this dish? Hades Era opened his nostrils and inhaled the aroma. Cola chicken wings, Bufong said. After that, he poured the bottle of cola in his hand into his mouth. Gurgle. The bubbling cola poured into Bufong's mouth, down his throat, and into his stomach. A sour and refreshing taste filled the air. It was as if a stream of hot air was rising from his stomach. It kept surging up and finally exploded. Burp! Bufong burped. The people around him were dumbfounded. What's wrong with Bufong? Can't he maintain his image? Hades Era narrowed his eyes and fixed them on the crystal bottle in Bufong's hand. That thing looks like something to drink. Is it good wine? However, he knew about Bufong's wine, but there was no such wine in his memory. Cola chicken wings? This name is a little unique. Chicken wings that can make people happy? The corners of the crown prince's mouth rose slightly. He seemed a little curious. Bufong glanced at the crown prince and rolled his eyes. There are 9 chicken wings here. You know what I mean. Bufong said. Hades Era, you, Lord Go, and the others couldn't help but nod. They understood. Wait a minute. Bufong, young man, how can you eat delicious food without wine? Let us have a taste of your new wine. Hades Era narrowed his eyes, his face full of smiles as he stared at Bufong. Wine? Bufong froze. He found that Hades Era's eyes were fixed on the cola bottle in his hand. The corners of his mouth twitched. Cola? Okay. Bufong's hand shook. Instantly, the iced cola box appeared. Take it yourself, Bufong said. Hades Era grinned. He couldn't wait, reaching out his hand and grabbing a bottle of cola. Bufong took out a bottle of cola, opened it with a screwdriver, and demonstrated it to Hades Era. Bufong handed the bottle to Lord Go. By the way, Bufong also opened a bottle for you. Hades Era immediately understood. He opened a bottle of cola with a screwdriver. Sizzle. The sound of bubbles popped. Hades Era was startled. You curiously looked at the cola in her hand, then at Bufong. Then, she poured into her mouth. Gulp. Gulp. Sizzle. Sizzle. Yu's eyes widened and her mouth bulged. The cola that entered Yu's mouth made all the pores on her body tighten. The cold taste flowed down her throat and into her stomach, making her feel as if she was drenched in cold rain. Then, her whole body felt hot. It was as if there was a gush of air rising from her stomach, rushing into her head. Awesome, Yu exclaimed in surprise. Then the air in her stomach was released. She parted her plump red lips, burping. Lord Dog's 2 dainty paws were hugging the Coke bottle. He was already drinking happily. He drank a mouthful and burped. He drank another mouthful and burped. He was having a lot of fun. Image? There was no such thing. What the F***CK? What kind of wine is this? It's so magical. Hades Era drank a mouthful. His scalp went numb, and he couldn't help but exclaim. Wine? No, this is not wine. This thing is called cola. Another name is soda. Bufong said. No one knew when he had grabbed a pair of chopsticks. While they were drinking the cola, Bufong used the chopsticks to pick up a cola chicken wing. As he picked up the cola chicken wing, the sauce was pulled out like a sparkling silk thread. He didn't hurry to bite it. Instead, Bufong first used his tongue to lick the sauce on the cola chicken wing. The sauce was the crystallization of the cola after it was boiled. It was sweet and delicious. Slurp. Bufong's tongue nimbly licked the chicken wing. After licking the sauce off, the brown gold chicken wing underneath was revealed. The skin of the chicken was extremely soft and tender. When he gently bit it, he felt chewy and elastic. The chicken seemed to burst out of his mouth. That feeling was indescribable after biting off the skin of the chicken, it was the meat in the chicken wing. The meat was tender and fragrant, emitting steam. The chicken bones even had a light pink color. As Bufong ate, he couldn't help but narrow his eyes. He seemed to taste the cola in the chicken. It was the taste in his memory. Bufong narrowed his eyes. Gulp, gulp. Hades era gulped down a mouthful of cola, exhaling. He felt a wave of comfort. Is this Bufong young man's new wine? It's so strong. It's much stronger than the previous wines. Opening his eyes, Hades era looked at Bufong. He found that Bufong was happily eating the chicken wing. That's called cola, not wine. Bufong felt the need to correct this guy's understanding of cola. Cola? The cola in cola chicken wings? Hades era seemed to have thought of something. At this moment, the crown prince also came to his senses from the strength of the cola. He covered his mouth, seeming a little embarrassed because he had hiccuped. So, besides the chicken wing, the cola is also the main ingredient of this dish? The crown prince asked. Now, he was more and more interested in this cola chicken wing. Yes, Bufong nodded. He grabbed the chopsticks and reached for the second chicken wing. Lord Go, you, and the others had all gathered around. The cola gave them a pleasant surprise. The refreshing taste made their bodies sway. They picked up a cola chicken wing. The crown prince looked at the cola chicken wing with the sauce flowing on it. The rich aroma drifted to the tip of his nose, and he couldn't help but swallow. It smells so good. It looks good. Just looking at the sauce made one salivate. The crown prince took a deep breath. Then he stuck out his tongue and couldn't help but lick the sauce on it. One lick, another lick, and the last lick. As soon as the sauce entered his mouth, the sweet taste made the crown prince feel incredulous. His eyes widened as he felt as if he had been hit by a majestic wave of air. The crown prince's eyes widened. He wanted to give a speech about the food. However, he found that the others were immersed in the food and ignored him. He smiled awkwardly. Then he opened his mouth and bit the chicken wing. Slurp, slurp. The soft and tender meat and the fragrant chicken made the crown prince feel as if his soul had been sublimated. It was as if he had turned into a noble chicken strolling among the flowers. Burp. Cola plus cola chicken wings. It was inexplicably refreshing. The crown prince almost burst out laughing. He took a bite of the chicken wing and was as happy as a child with a toy in his hand. Hades era glanced at the crown prince in disgust. Has this kid become stupid after eating chicken wings? Slurp, slurp. There were 9 chicken wings in total. Hades era ate very fast. He knew that if he didn't eat fast, he wouldn't be able to get the next chicken wing. You and Lord Go were both silent. They ate first and talked later. They quickly finished the first wing and reached for the second one. When the crown prince finished eating, he was dumbfounded. He found that the blue and white porcelain plate was empty. Bufong spat out the chicken bone. He leaned back lazily in the chair and exhaled, feeling very comfortable. Although I don't have the God of Cooking set, the quality of the dishes didn't decline much. Perhaps I really relied too much on the God of Cooking set and forgot the joy and original purpose of cooking. Bufong was lost in thought. In the past, he cooked with the help of the God of Cooking set. He had somewhat lost himself. Now that he had lost the God of Cooking set, he had returned to the original joy of cooking. That was good. Of course, it was necessary to repair the God of Cooking set. The God of Cooking set was not only a tool, but also a belief. Of course, it was also a companion. It was Bufong's companion on the road to becoming the God of Cooking. Slurp, slurp. The crown prince finished the chicken wing. He spat out the bones on the table. The corners of his mouth were stained with sauce. He stuck out his tongue and licked it, not letting go of any taste. After eating, there was still a little Coke left in the bottle. He grabbed it, poured it into his mouth, and drank it in one gulp. Burp. Finally, he let out a satisfied burp. The crown prince was very satisfied. Xiao Bai had returned. His mechanical eyes flashed, and the purple lightning around him was dispersing. The crown prince looked at Xiao Bai with a gentle smile on his face. After eating and drinking to his heart's content, everything became very pleasing to the eye. Suddenly, the Crown Prince's eyes froze. He turned his head in disbelief and looked at Bufang, because he found that inside his body, a surging aura was boiling. It was like a seed buried deep in the soil had broken through the shackles of the soil with an unyielding will and poked its head out, breaking through the soil and being reborn. A mighty life force was surging inside his body. That life force made his hair stand on end, and it was far more than that. This is this feeling. The Crown Prince took a deep breath. His eyes were bursting with bright light. Life force hovered over his head, making him feel high-spirited. However, the most important thing was the strange feeling that made all the cells in his body wake up. His power of law became unusually active. The law of space and the law of destruction were restless like naughty puppies. They wanted to break through the shackles. Countless strands of energy and aura surged out of his body. The Crown Prince opened his mouth and let out a long roar. His eyes were overflowing with bright light. A beam of light shot out from between his brows. It rushed out of the restaurant and soared into the sky. Rumble. A rumbling sound rang out in the sky, and the wheel of law emerged at this moment. The whole capital of the divine dynasty was shaken. In the palace, the divine emperor was slightly taken aback. "Ear is going to break through? You and Lord Go both looked at the Crown Prince in surprise. Hades' heir's mouth was wide open, and he was still biting a half-eaten cola chicken wing. Little Emperor ate a chicken wing and is going to become a god. Chapter 1543. Oh, this beam of light means that someone is about to break through. Many people in the divine dynasty's capital sensed the aura, and a look of shock came over their faces. In fact, what shocked them was the momentum of the breakthrough. This kind of momentum was definitely the breakthrough of a monstrous existence. Moreover, he was not an ordinary genius. The two wheels of law in the sky seemed to be on the verge of exploding with energy. In the palace, the divine emperor stood at the door with his hands clasped behind his back. Beside him, a eunuch stood respectfully. This aura, it's the aura of two supreme laws of the universe, he said faintly. In the entire divine dynasty, the one who comprehended two supreme laws of the universe should be Ea, the Crown Prince. The eunuch who was standing respectfully beside the divine emperor was shocked to his core. The Crown Prince is about to break through to the God realm? How could he be so fast? Without warning? The Crown Prince's identity was destined to be extraordinary, and with such an extraordinary identity, it was impossible for him to break through without warning. Did something happen? Come, accompany me for a walk, the divine emperor said lightly. The eunuch nodded quickly. The old eunuch nodded. With his hands clasped behind his back, the divine emperor took a step and soared into the sky at a steady pace. His robe fluttered in the wind. The old eunuch followed him. After all, he was not weak, as he was able to follow the divine emperor. The two of them headed toward the source of the beam of light. From afar, he could see the source of the light beam. It was Bufang's restaurant. It was Bufang's restaurant again. The divine emperor's eyes narrowed slightly. He was somewhat curious about Bufang. He was the man chosen by Mu Hongzi and could withstand a heaven god's palm. All these signs showed that Bufang was extraordinary. Have gold armor seal off the surroundings. No one is allowed to get close. The Crown Prince needs silence when he breaks through, the divine emperor said. The divine emperor coughed a few times and slumped his back. The eunuch hurried away to inform gold armor. Before long, one gold armor guard after another descended and surrounded the restaurant to prevent outsiders from entering. The Crown Prince closed his eyes. His hair was flying backward, and his aura was surging as he kept breaking through to a new realm. He had been waiting for this moment for a long time. He didn't expect that Bufang's dish would be the opportunity for him to break through. It would be much more difficult for a genius who had comprehended two supreme laws of the universe to make a breakthrough than an ordinary person. This was because breaking through the shackles required more energy than ordinary people. Boom! In the sky, The wheel of law seemed to be spinning. It was as if they were responding to something from afar. The sky rotated and became transparent all of a sudden. The stars in the universe seemed to have appeared and became extremely resplendent. It was as if a supreme existence was watching over everything through the connection of the laws. Boom! It was a wonderful feeling. The crown prince was immersed in it, and the power of the laws lingered around him. The other end of the light beam connected to the other party. An unparalleled aura began to fill the air. Everyone cried out in surprise. Even the divine emperor slightly narrowed his eyes. This is the aura of a heavenly god. The god emperor sucked in a breath of cold air. A look of excitement appeared on his aged face. He didn't think that the crown prince would be able to attract the attention of a heavenly god. Was he going to be guided by the Empyrean god? This was a rare opportunity. It was not only the divine emperor. The others sucked in a breath of cold air and exclaimed in surprise. It was incredible that someone who comprehended two supreme laws of the universe could be guided by a heavenly god. What if he comprehended three supreme laws of the universe? Many people's breathing quickened. They thought of the existence who was even more talented than the crown prince. If that person broke through to the god realm, would he also be guided by a heavenly god? However, many people had strange expressions on their faces. That was because that genius was seriously injured by a heavenly god. Would the heavenly god still guide him? No one knew. However, they were getting more and more curious. In a restaurant, Bu Fong sat in a chair and watched indifferently. The crown prince had broken through. He was not surprised by this. As a dish in the god of cooking's menu, how could the cola chicken wings not have something special? Even Nether King Erha's aura had become much stronger after eating the cola chicken wings. However, the dish did not have much effect on Bu Fong. His eyes were as calm as an ancient well, as if he was used to it. He looked at the crown prince, who was breaking through. He sensed the towering aura and light beam. The heavenly god's guidance? Bu Fong narrowed his eyes. After all, the god of cooking set was destroyed by the heavenly god. Bu Fong would never forget that. Bu Fong had never been a generous man. The crown prince's breakthrough soon came to an end, because the crown prince's aura began to surge. The aura guided by the heavenly god poured into his body, making him stronger like a butterfly breaking out of a cocoon. A demigod and a god. There was a qualitative gap between them. But around the crown prince, one power of law after another was comprehended, blooming like flower petals. Many ordinary laws were comprehended by the crown prince. The crown prince's cultivation base climbed like a ladder. Finally, after comprehending nearly 500 laws, his cultivation base stopped soaring. And his cultivation base had reached the level of a peak mid-grade god. Whoosh! The crown prince opened his mouth and breathed out a mouthful of foul air. Bu Fong looked at the crown prince. He was a little absent-minded. Suddenly, the system's serious voice rang out in Bu Fong's head. This voice made Bu Fong shudder involuntarily. Attention, host. A temporary task has been issued, the system said. Bu Fong's pupils constricted. It's here. It's finally here. Temporary task. Host, please go to the Titan Divine Dynasty and obtain the Titan's heart. Temporary task reward. 1 fragment of the God of Cooking set. 1 drop of the God of Cooking Divine Power, liquid drop. The system's serious voice rang out. It's finally here. Bu Fong's pupils constricted. He had been looking forward to this moment for a long time. The last fragment of the God of Cooking set. The system had told him that if he wanted to repair the God of Cooking set, he had to gather all the fragments and summon the last God of Cooking set. Bu Fong had been looking forward to seeing what the last God of Cooking set was. And now, he finally had the chance to see it. Bu Fong took a deep breath. Go to the Titan Divine Dynasty and obtain the Titan's heart. That's the Titan Divine Dynasty's divine artifact. Why is the system asking me to obtain it? The system usually wouldn't issue such an unreasonable task because the Titan's heart is an object with an owner. That's not very good, is it? Bu Fong furrowed his brows. The system's arrangement is free. Host, you will know when the time comes, the system said. Obviously, there were some things the system didn't tell Bufong. Bufong didn't ask any more questions. Perhaps there's a reason for it. Could the Titan's heart be useful in repairing the God of Cooking set? Bufong furrowed his brows. He glanced at the Crown Prince, who was still savoring his breakthrough. Then, he turned and looked into the distance as if he had seen through something. His mind flickered. The void was torn apart. Buzz outside the Luo family skyscraper. With his hands clasped behind his back, the Divine Emperor turned to look at the void beside him. There, Bufong slowly walked out of it. Your Majesty, Mr. Bu, long time no see. The Divine Emperor looked at Bufong with a smile, like a gentle grandfather. He had always been kind to Bufong. How are you? Bufong asked, twitching the corner of his mouth slightly. The Divine Emperor nodded. Not bad. The calamity is gone, and I'm much more relaxed than before. Thank you for providing ear with the fortune, Mr. Bu. Otherwise, I don't know how long it would take for him to break through and become a god. If you have any requests, please don't hesitate to ask. The Divine Emperor seemed to have guessed what Bufong wanted to ask. How much do you know about the Titan's heart, Your Majesty? Bufong asked faintly with his hands clasped behind his back. The Titan's heart. The Divine Emperor paused and looked at Bufong doubtfully. He didn't expect Bufong to ask this question. The Titan's heart is the divine artifact of the Titan Divine Dynasty. It is enshrined in the divine temple of the Titan Divine Dynasty. Its level is very high, higher than the 3 divine artifacts of the Xiai Divine Dynasty. It is said to be a treasure left behind by an ancient heaven god of the Titan Divine Dynasty. The Divine Emperor imparted some knowledge to Bufong. Is that so? Bufong nodded. Then, does Your Majesty know how to get the Titan's heart? Bufong asked again. This was what he was concerned about. Get the Titan's heart? The Divine Emperor's expression became very strange as he glanced at Bufong. The Titan's heart is enshrined in the godly temple, guarded by 4 top-tier godly kings. But now, only 3 are left, and one of them is Taishan, who died not long ago. But even if there are 3 left, it won't be easy to obtain it. After all, there's still an army guarding it. Moreover, with the Titan Divine Emperor around, if you want to obtain the Titan's heart, unless a heavenly god acts, even I can't do it. The Divine Emperor shook his head. He seemed to have seen through Bufong's thoughts. However, he did not advise Bufong to do so. If Bufong went to the Titan Divine Dynasty, he would be courting death. And I have to remind you that there is something wrong with the Titan Divine Dynasty recently. It is very dangerous. The Divine Emperor said, all the spies I planted in the Titan Divine Dynasty have disappeared, including a high-grade God King, he said with a sigh. The Divine Emperor frowned, looking a little serious. I've been tracking down the news of those strange creatures. Many spies have come to report that they have all fled to the Titan Divine Dynasty. The Titan Divine Dynasty is really not safe now. Bufong was slightly taken aback. He did not expect such a thing to happen. He had been busy running the shop, so he did not know much about these secrets. However, he still had to complete the temporary task. No matter what the Titan Divine Dynasty had become, the strange creatures were gathering there. Perhaps the defense there was not strong enough. Could it be that the Titan Divine Dynasty had become the divine dynasty of those strange creatures? The Divine Emperor looked at Bufong and smiled. If Mr. Bu wants to know more about the Titan's heart, you can go to the library in the palace. There are special records about it. You can go there and read them. The Divine Emperor said. He was indebted to Bufong for saving his life, so he could naturally fulfill this request. Bufong nodded. Since he had nothing to do, he might as well go and have a look. The Crown Prince came out. He was still a little excited and even high-spirited, but after being scolded by the Divine Emperor, he calmed down. The gold armor guards retreated. The Divine Emperor and the Crown Prince returned to the palace. Bufong, on the other hand, went to the library. After reading about the Titan's heart, Bufong returned to the restaurant. He began to prepare for the temporary task. He had to go to the Titan Divine Dynasty. After all, this temporary task was related to the last fragment of the God of Cooking set. Once it was completed, the broken god of cooking set would have a chance to be repaired. Bufang naturally would not give up. But as the divine emperor said, this trip was not simple. Bufang had to be fully prepared. Yu and Lord Go wanted to go with him, but Bufang refused. This trip was dangerous, and he had to go alone. Bufang refused firmly, so Lord Go and Yu did not ask again. Life returned to normal. He opened a restaurant during the day and prepared to go to the Titan Divine Dynasty at night. Time passed little by little. The crown prince had broken through to the god realm, but he still came to the restaurant every day to work as a waiter. Now, he was eager for Bufang to cook cola chicken wings again. He was somewhat addicted. He revealed that his breakthrough was related to the restaurant. For a moment, the whole Divine Dynasty was shaken. The restaurant, which was already very popular, became even more popular. It was full every day. Finally, one day, the restaurant's door did not open. A board was hung on the door, and on the board was written, "Closed for business." But specks of white light were dispersing. Clad in a plain white robe, Bufang's long hair was tied up with a velvet rope. With his hands clasped behind his back, he disappeared into the teleportation array. Then, he went to the Titan Divine Dynasty. In the Titan Divine Dynasty, in the towering palace, black smoke spread, and a terrible aura blotted out the sky. Suddenly, the Titan Divine Emperor, sitting cross-legged in the palace, opened his eyes. In the depths of his eyes, a scarlet light flashed for a moment before disappearing. Oh, what a familiar aura. Is it that damn chef? Is he going to walk into a trap? The corners of the Titan Divine Emperor's mouth curved upward into a cold smile. Chapter 1544. In the Divine Chef Temple, at the ancient heaven god seal, clad in a plain white robe, Bufang clasped his hands behind his back and looked at the heaven god seal with a faint flicker in his eyes. Bufang was very curious about what was behind the seal, but he was not in a hurry. When he returned from the Titan Divine Dynasty, he would have time to slowly crack the ancient heaven god seal. This thing contained the inheritance of the ancient heaven god, and it could also inherit divine powers. Bufang naturally would not miss it. Summer stood behind the railing and looked at Bufang, who was deep in thought. There was a complicated look in her eyes. His cooking utensils were destroyed, and he was suppressed by the heaven god. Was the genius of the past going to remain silent forever? However, as the lord of the Divine Chef Temple, Bufang shared their honor and disgrace. If anyone thought Bufang could no longer lift his knife, the Divine Chef Temple would not be polite. The specks of light faded away. Bufang landed on the ground and squinted at his surroundings. He squinted and glanced around. There was no doubt that the system had completed the teleportation, and he was now in the Titan Divine Dynasty. He glanced around and found himself in a vast wasteland. On the wasteland, there was a towering earthen yellow city. That was the capital of the Titan Divine Dynasty. The system had teleported him out of the capital. According to Xiaoyuhe, the Divine Emperor, the Titan Divine Dynasty's divine temple was located in this capital, and the Titan's heart was also in it. The Titan's heart. Bufang exhaled. That was the goal of his trip. With his hands clasped behind his back, he walked along the official road toward the majestic city that exuded a simple and unadorned aura. The Titan Divine Dynasty was different from the Xiai Divine Dynasty. Its location was rather desolate, filled with rugged rocks and a strange, treacherous terrain. This was also the reason why the people of the Titan Divine Dynasty were simple and fierce. The people here were dressed quite openly. The men were topless, and their bodies were painted with many complicated barbaric glyphs. The women were more reserved, but they only covered their private parts with animal skins. Moreover, the people of the Titan Divine Dynasty all had dark skin, which made them look rather fierce. Of course, that only referred to the pure-blooded people of the Titan Divine Dynasty. With the development of the times, the Titan Divine Dynasty also brought in many people from other divine dynasties, such as the Immortal Spirit Divine Dynasty and the Xiai Divine Dynasty, to develop trade together. Therefore, when Bufang walked on the official road, he did not attract too much attention. The capital of the Titan Divine Dynasty was enormous. The architectural style here was famous for its fierceness and directness. The city walls were extremely tall, and they were built with huge stones that weighed tens of thousands of kilograms. There were no guards in front of the city gates. The official road led straight into the city. Bufang followed the flow of people and directly stepped into the city. There were no guards supervising, and no one came to question Bufang. Even Bufang found it a little strange. Why was the capital of the Divine Dynasty so lightly guarded? It was not like the Xiai Divine Dynasty's capital, where everything inside and outside had to be meticulously inspected. Frowning, Bufang walked in the capital of the Titan Divine Dynasty. The whole capital gave him a strange feeling. It was as if it was lifeless. This was very strange. Moreover, when he walked in the city, he could not smell the slightest aroma of food in the air. Don't the people of the Titan Divine Dynasty like to eat delicious food? Restaurants. I can't see a single one. Some people were different. Food was the most important thing to the people. This should be the same in every country. Forget it. These were not what Bufang needed to pay attention to. He came to the Titan Divine Dynasty for a temporary task, to find the Titan's heart. Now, Bufang had no intention of opening a branch in the Titan Divine Dynasty. For some reason, Bufang suddenly felt a little disgusted with the Titan Divine Dynasty. He put his hands behind his back. People were surging around him, but Bufang felt as if needles were pricking his back, as if countless eyes were spying on him. However, when he looked back several times, he could not find the person who was spying on him. It made his hair stand on end, as if the people around him were spying on him. There are always unruly people who want to harm me. Bufang's heart did not waver. It was getting late. Bufang found an inn in the capital and stayed there for the time being. He needed to take his time to find the Titan's heart. In the imperial palace of the Titan Divine Dynasty, a rumble rang out. The doors of the palace were suddenly opened. A figure stepped out of it. It was a young man with bronze skin and a head full of curly hair. The man's eyes flashed. Father actually wants me to capture someone now? A foreigner? The young man was followed by 2 guards. Their eyes were indifferent, as if they were devoid of emotion. Is there a need to make such a big fuss over a foreigner? Since Uncle Tai Shan's death, Father's behavior has become more and more unpredictable, the young man said with a sigh. Your Highness, His Majesty has his reasons for doing things. We only need to carry out his orders. The 2 guards standing behind the young man said with dull eyes. The young man was the crown prince of the Titan Divine Dynasty. Have you found that man's information? The Titan crown prince asked, twitching his mouth. The Divine Emperor has given us the information. That man is from the Xiai Divine Dynasty, a top genius of the younger generation. It is said that he has defeated all the younger generation of the Xiai Divine Dynasty, including the crown prince. He is an extremely talented genius who has comprehended 3 supreme laws of the universe and is a candidate to become the next heaven god. One of them said, the Titan crown prince's pupils constricted. Comprehended 3 supreme laws of the universe. The Titan crown prince felt as if all the blood and energy in his body were on the verge of boiling. I've long wanted to see the genius of the Xiai Divine Dynasty. Did you say that the crown prince of the Xiai Divine Dynasty was defeated? He asked. The 2 guards nodded. Interesting. The Titan crown prince clenched his fists, and the barbaric glyphs on his body seemed to be pulsing. Let's go. Let's find that foreigner. The crown prince said. A crude-looking warship slowly came to a stop. The crown prince and the 2 guards stepped into the warship and started it. The warship rumbled, turned into a beam of light, and sped into the distance. The crown prince wanted to find a foreigner in the capital. This was naturally not difficult. After all, the crown prince's status was very noble. It was not a problem to find a foreigner. The sky was still dark. Outside and in, one warship after another floated up and anchored outside. The owner of the inn walked out, nodding and bowing to the warship. The Titan crown prince walked out of the warship. You said that the foreigner is in your inn? The crown prince said, glancing indifferently at the owner. Your Highness, I saw it with my own eyes. Everything is true. Moreover, That foreigner has not moved all night. He's been staying in his room. The innkeeper was very respectful, and there was a fanatical look on his face. Very good. If you catch that foreigner, you will be handsomely rewarded, the crown prince said, the corners of his mouth curling slightly. The innkeeper was overjoyed. The divine emperor had given the order. He was very proud to complete the task for the divine emperor. Of course, it was more because of the reward. The innkeeper led the group of people to a room. The door of the room was closed, and there was no sound. Your Highness, the foreigner is in the room. The innkeeper narrowed his eyes, and the barbaric glyphs on his face trembled slightly. The crown prince nodded. Then he glanced at the two guards. The guards immediately unleashed their auras and gently placed their palms on the door. Buzz, the door melted like snow and turned into running water on the ground. The terrifying method made the innkeeper shiver all over. It was too terrifying, whether it was the crown prince or the people around him. They were all too terrifying. The crown prince was also known as the strongest crown prince of the Titan divine dynasty. The guard suddenly let out a soft cry of surprise. He glanced at the crown prince, but he shook his head calmly. Your Highness, there's no one in the room. No one. The innkeeper was taken aback. He hurriedly rushed into the room, only to find that it was empty. The thin young man was no longer in the room. Impossible. I've been watching that young man. The innkeeper was a little dazed. The disappearance of the young man meant that he had no chance of getting the reward. It seems that the foreigner must have noticed something. The crown prince clasped his hands behind his back, a thoughtful look in his eyes. Then, the group of people walked out of the inn. They boarded the warship. A strange energy fluctuation spread from it. The barbaric glyphs began to wriggle like worms, emitting ripples as if they were searching for something. On the official road, Bufong walked with his hands clasped behind his back, holding a steaming oyster pancake in his hand. Before dawn, he had gone out. The location of the divine temple had been determined, and he was going to investigate the situation. Munch! Munch! The oyster pancake was dripping with oil and was extremely fragrant. Bufong was eating happily. A mouthful of steaming hot oyster bun dispelled much of the chill of the night. He walked on the street. At night, in the Titan divine dynasty, there were very few pedestrians on the streets. It was a sharp contrast to the capital of the Xiai divine dynasty, which was like a city that never sleeps. After walking for an unknown amount of time, Bufong had eaten his fifth oyster pancake. Only then did he see a magnificent building in the distance. It was a pagoda. Beneath, it was a stretch of buildings. That was the divine temple of the Titan divine dynasty. The divine temple was towering, exuding mystery and strangeness. It was as if a divine light filled the starry sky, making people bow and submit to it. The divine temple was located in a relatively remote place in the capital. It was desolate and dark, and a straight official road led there. It was desolate and mysterious. Bufong walked on the official road. When he looked up, he could see the divine temple. He could feel that there seemed to be a strange energy in the temple that was attracting him. It was a wonderful feeling. After walking for a while on the horizon, the bright red sun rose. It cast a warm glow on the ground and drove away the chill of the night. At this moment, Bufong finally came to the front gate of the divine temple. The pagoda was very tall. Each floor was nearly 100 meters high, and there were 9 floors in total. In other words, it was 900 meters tall. Including the spire, it should be 1,000 meters high. It was like a behemoth piercing through heaven and earth. Even the sky above the pagoda was shrouded in white clouds and mist. He entered the divine temple complex. Bufong walked in only one direction. Soon, he came to the foot of the pagoda. In front of the pagoda, a figure was standing there as if he had been waiting for Bufong for a long time. With an oyster pancake in his mouth, Bufong narrowed his eyes. Behind him, the sound of something piercing through the air rang out. The sound of something tearing through the sky rang out. Then, the warship came over and hovered in the air. The Titan crown prince slowly stepped out of it. Behind him were 2 guards. The eyes of the guards flickered with black light as they locked onto Bufong's body. They grinned, revealing looks of greed. Bufang was slightly taken aback. He glanced at the figure in front of the pagoda, then at the crown prince and the others behind him. With a crunch, he bit into the oyster pancake. Before he knew it, he was surrounded. Chapter 1545. There were wolves in front and tigers in the back. This was probably the situation Bufang was in right now. In front of him was a 1,000-meter-tall divine pagoda. Sitting cross-legged at the lower end of the pagoda was the keeper. The morning light shone from the horizon and shone on the temple keeper's body. The temple keeper opened his eyes, which seemed to be bursting with thousands of streams of light. They were extremely bright. The crown prince stood proudly in the sky, and the barbaric glyphs on his body seemed to be glowing in the light. In the Titan divine dynasty, the keeper was in existence second only to the divine emperor, and his strength was unparalleled. He could not believe that this foreigner in front of him dared to break into the divine temple without permission. He was really reckless. In the crown prince's eyes, Bufang's cultivation base was only at the demigod realm. The crown prince was very interested when he got Bufang's information, but now he felt bored. It seemed that the so-called Xiai divine dynasty was not as strong as the legend said. He had heard that the crown prince of the Xiai divine dynasty had comprehended two supreme laws of the universe, but now it seemed that his reputation was undeserved. If a demigod, and a sickly demigod at that, could crush the crown prince of the Xiai divine dynasty, then how weak was this crown prince? He was simply an insult to the title of crown prince. Bufang finished the oyster pancake in his mouth. His hands were stained with oil, so he took out a clean towel and wiped them. Only then did Bufang slowly raise his head and look into the distance. There, the keeper's eyes were fixed on Bufang. There were 4 keepers, and Xia Yue had said that except for the dead Tai Shan, there were 3 more. These 3 were the pillars of the Titan divine dynasty. However, in Bufang's opinion, these so-called pillars seemed to have some terrible problems. Foreigner, who gave you the courage to break into the divine temple of the Titan divine dynasty? The crown prince walked out of the warship and rose into the sky step by step. His aura was suppressed, like the calm before a storm. Around him, warships after warships floated up and down. They were the many geniuses of the Titan divine dynasty who had come with the crown prince. Tai Fei, who had fought with Bufang, was also one of these geniuses. Now that so many of them had appeared, it was enough to shake the whole Titan divine dynasty. Bufang never thought that his appearance in the Titan divine dynasty would cause such an uproar. Why? Bufang narrowed his eyes. He seemed to be puzzled and pondering. Boom! Crown Prince, you are the strongest person among the younger generation of the Titan divine dynasty. You don't need Her Highness to deal with this foreigner. Let me experience the strength of a foreigner. There was a roar. It was as if a ferocious beast was roaring. In a warship, a burly figure shot out. That person's entire body was covered in muscles that resembled a horned dragon's, and there were even barbaric glyphs engraved all over it. His barbaric glyphs were different from the others. They were engraved with a gray wolf. The man was indeed like a ferocious wolf. His target was Bufang, and he shot forward in an instant. He shot straight at Bufang like a cannonball. The power of law surged. He was not even going to use his barbaric glyphs. The surrounding warships formed a circle around him. They surrounded Bufang in the middle. The keeper sat cross-legged under the pagoda, unmoved, as if he was watching the show quietly. The geniuses on the surrounding warships began to shout, as if they were cheering for the man who attacked. The people of the Zhou family are still so impatient. The crown prince put his hands behind his back and smiled faintly. In that case, I'll let him show off. He should be able to deal with a mere demigod. Of course, I can't take him lightly. The man who attacked, he was a genius of the Zhou family, a top clan in the Titan divine dynasty. He had broken through to the mid-grade god realm a few days ago. Now, he was in high spirits and wanted to use Bufang, a foreigner, as a stepping stone to make himself famous in the Titan divine dynasty. Rumble, like a wolf, he descended from the sky with a howl. Then, he smashed into the road in front of the divine temple. The ferocious energy waves blew against Bufong's hair, causing it to flutter unceasingly. A genius from a foreign dynasty? Is he really so weak? The genius of the Zhua family grinned. His eyes narrowed, and the power of law burst out of him. It was the law of force. He threw out a punch that seemed to shatter the air. It was very violent. As if influenced by the atmosphere, the geniuses of the Titan divine dynasty on the warships all cheered. It was as if they had witnessed the victory. The Titan divine dynasty was a warlike divine dynasty. The same was true for the younger generation. The punch was like the wind and sand. It was extremely terrifying. It went straight for Bufong's face. In the eyes of the onlookers, Bufong seemed to be petrified, and they could not help but sneer. The crown prince even shook his head in amusement. He could not believe that his father had asked him to capture such a weak foreigner. Was there a need to use a butcher's knife to kill a chicken? In his opinion, Zhuadamu alone was enough to deal with Bufong. Zhuadamu, the genius of the Zhua family, was so excited that all his pores were trembling. His fist approached Bufong. In a flash, it approached Bufong and was about to hit Bufong's face. If it fell, it would be enough to completely crush Bufong. However, was that really the case? Bufong looked at Zhuadamu, who was approaching. His expression did not change in the slightest. He even calmly took out a canteen and took a sip of water. He was a little thirsty after eating too much oyster pancake. "You're courting death." Seeing how calm Bufong was, Zhuadamu thought that Bufong was pretending to be calm. At first glance, his punch seemed to have fused with the law of force, but in fact, it also contained the law of explosion, the law of ripping, and other brutal laws. Once it exploded, its lethality was comparable to the law of destruction, the supreme law of the universe. "Tell me, how do I block it?" Zhuadamu's eyes were filled with excitement. He threw out a punch. Boom! It tore through the air, and in the next breath, it was about to hit Bufong's face. Boom! The sound of an explosion rang out. Everyone was taken aback. They saw Zhuadamu's body fly backward, and a terrible explosion exploded on his body. With a loud boom, Zhuadamu's body fell in the distance, dripping with blood. Gulp. Bufong took a sip of the scalding spring of life. He was very weak now, so he needed to drink more water. Little Hu, lying on Bufong's shoulder, burped. There was still smoke rising from her mouth. "It's that fox. That fox blasted Zhuadamu away with one shot." I was wondering why this foreigner was so calm. It turns out that he has something to rely on. The crowd was in an uproar. They all sympathized with Zhuadamu. After all, Zhuadamu was the first one to test the waters. However, Zhuadamu had brought this upon himself. Of course, many people found it funny that a fox had blasted Zhuadamu away with one shot. Zhuadamu's face was probably going to be completely disgraced. The Crown Prince's eyes focused. "That fox, Crown Prince. Let me do it. How long can a mere beast protect this foreigner?" A figure sneered and flew out. He was a genius of the Titan divine dynasty, a clan that could stand shoulder to shoulder with the Zhua family. He was similar to the young masters of the Xiai divine dynasty. They were both proud and arrogant monsters. A beam of blade light fell from the sky and enveloped Bufong's body. He wanted to kill Bufong once and for all. Little Hu lay on Bufong's shoulder, her 9 tails waving. He glanced at the figure in the sky, who was charging at him. Little Hu rolled her eyes. She opened her mouth as if she was yawning. Bang! A blood-red cannonball shot out. This time, the genius saw it clearly. It was a beef meatball. The spinning meatball contained terrible explosive power. Ridiculous. Fighting an enemy with a meatball? Who are you looking down on? The genius sneered. A fox, a meatball. A weak young man. Are they here to make a joke? However, he didn't let his guard down. Holding the long blade in his hand, the genius didn't try to dodge. Instead, he slashed at meatballs. The knife slashed down. The meatball cracked and exploded. At the instant of the explosion, a terrifying shockwave spread out. The expression of the genius from the ancient clans turned extremely ugly. A loud boom rang out, and sparks flew in all directions. Like withered lilies, the genius fell from the sky to the ground in a mess. Bufong held a cup of water and blew away the hot air in the quilt. Little Hu wagged his tail, stuck out his tongue, and licked Bufong's face, making Bufong feel itchy. He seemed to be telling Bufong that these people were too weak. The Crown Prince's eyes focused. The surrounding geniuses stopped making a ruckus. They had thought that he was a weak foreigner, a piece of meat on the chopping block. But now it seemed that it was too early to tell. No wonder this young man could become famous in the Xiai divine dynasty. He did have some tricks up his sleeve. The people of the world really couldn't be underestimated. For a moment, no one made a move because of fear. The Crown Prince smiled faintly. He took a step forward. As if compressing the void, he hovered in the sky in an instant. The Titan Crown Prince had comprehended the law of destruction, one of the supreme laws of the universe. His cultivation base had even reached the level of a low-grade god king. His fighting prowess was no weaker than that of a mid-grade god king. If he made a move, he would definitely win. In the direction of the divine temple, the keeper still bowed his head and didn't move. Bufong glanced in that direction, then at the Crown Prince, and didn't say anything. He stroked Little Hu's head. The next moment, Little Hu sped forward. He turned into a beam of light and sped toward the Crown Prince in the sky. Have fun and be safe, Bufong told Little Hu. The Crown Prince's face grew colder and colder. Is he taking me as this beast's toy? How ridiculous. Rumble. The Crown Prince focused his eyes and threw out a palm. He wanted to kill the fox in an instant. However, Little Hu was very fast. He moved in midair and dodged the Crown Prince's palm. Then he spat out one explosive meatball after another. The explosions instantly enveloped the Crown Prince. The surrounding geniuses fell silent. A fox was able to hold the Crown Prince back. This sickly foreigner did have something to rely on. However, the Crown Prince had more tricks up his sleeve. Roar! An angry bestial roar rang out. In an instant, the Crown Prince's body seemed to turn into a beam of golden light. The barbaric glyphs on it began to tremble, and his aura grew stronger and stronger. These were all the Crown Prince's tricks. At this moment, the Crown Prince's strength was even comparable to that of a high-grade god king. The law of destruction and the inherited barbaric glyphs. The Crown Prince's strength, speed, divine sense, and so on had all been greatly improved. The barbaric glyphs on it looked like a roaring dragon-shaped glyphs. Feeling the pressure, Little Hu took a deep breath. He puffed up his cheeks and widened his eyes. Then he opened his mouth wide. Clatter, clatter, clatter. Blue light burst out of Little Hu's mouth and flames surged. One explosive meatball after another flew toward the Crown Prince like shooting stars, drowning him in an instant. While Little Hu was fighting the Crown Prince, the others in the sky had their eyes fixed on Bufong. Bufong, who looked sickly and weak, was holding a cup of hot water and drinking from it. He was as weak as a little sheep. Catch this foreigner, and we can restrain that beast, someone suggested. Then the figures of several geniuses moved. They jumped off the warship and sped toward Bufong like cannonballs. If they caught Bufong, they could threaten and suppress that beast. Of course, there was a great reward for catching the foreigner. Even though they were geniuses, the temptation of money still tempted them. One figure after another fell like cannonballs. They went straight for Bufong. No one thought that Bufong would resist. He looked sickly, as if he would be blown down by the wind at any time. Even if he resisted, it would be useless. This foreigner was a target for them to trample on. The ground around the official road exploded, and plumes of smoke and dust turned into straight lines, heading straight for Bufong. Sizzle. Sizzle. Bufong took a sip of the sweet water. Then he glanced around unhurriedly, looking at the group of geniuses of the Titan divine dynasty who were approaching him excitedly. It was as if he could see a flock of little sheep bleating at him. They were really cute. Chapter 1546. These geniuses are kind of cute. Yes, in Bufong's eyes, These geniuses of the Titan divine dynasty who were rushing toward him were really cute. Rumble. In the sky, the crown prince of the Titan divine dynasty was glowing all over. That was the sign that his barbaric glyphs were completely activated. At the same time, the Titan divine dynasty's crown prince's body suddenly straightened up. 100 feet, 1,000 feet, 1,000 feet. He turned into a giant, towering between heaven and earth. The barbaric glyphs on his body shone brightly, revealing the image of a winding divine dragon. His eyes were blazing as he grabbed the divine dragon, his aura fluctuating. He was indeed worthy of being the crown prince of a dynasty. The pressure he exuded was comparable to that of a mid-grade god king. Little Who opened his mouth. Blue flames sputtered in all directions. The sound of crunching rang out incessantly. One meatball after another shot out her mouth. Although it looked funny, its power could not be underestimated. The crown prince had grown to a height of 10,000 feet, and his fleshly body seemed to have become much stronger. No matter how the meatballs hit him and kept exploding, he remained unscathed. How dare a mere beast provoke me? The crown prince's eyes shone like torches. He was a prince, and now he was the crown prince. Naturally, his pressure was magnificent. How could he tolerate a spirit beast provoking him? Many people were impassioned when they saw the crown prince's majestic appearance. They roared excitedly. They cheered for the crown prince according to the customs of the Titan divine dynasty. They expressed their respect for him from the bottom of their hearts. Rumble. Smoke and dust billowed on the ground. One expert after another rapidly approached and went straight to capture Bufong. Bufong was a foreigner that the divine emperor had named to capture. How could they let him go? Bufong drank some water and exhaled. Drinking water was good for one's health. The next moment, Bufong raised his head and looked indifferently at the geniuses of the Titan divine dynasty who were approaching. Bufong raised an arm. It was the Taotai arm. As the light swirled, it seemed to turn into glass, and the bones inside could be seen. If it was before, Bufong might just take out the Black Turtle Constellation Walk and slap these cute and silly little guys away. But the current Bufong couldn't do that, because the Black Turtle Constellation Walk was broken. Therefore, Bufong could only choose a simpler and more direct method. A person approached, his barbaric glyphs surging. The terrifying roar of his chi and blood seemed to cause the void to explode. With a long howl, a fist came smashing over. Bufong, on the other hand, waved his crystal-clear hands so lightly that his bones could be seen. Bang! There was an explosion. Bufong was as still as a mountain. As for that genius, his entire arm was twisted in a weird way, and his body was instantly sent flying. A miserable howl broke out. This scene caused the surrounding people's pupils to shrink. He was slightly surprised. Boom, boom, boom. Bufong casually threw out 4 palm strikes, and the 4 geniuses who were charging at him were knocked flying backward. The smoke and dust on the ground dispersed. The appearance of the 4 monsters who were sent flying was revealed. That look, hiss, 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 everyone sucked in a breath of cold air, feeling a chill spreading from the soles of their feet. The places where the 4 geniuses were slapped by Bufong looked like they were about to explode. Is this really a sick demigod? Demigod? Was there such a terrifying demigod in the world? Could it be that this fellow still had some tricks up his sleeves? Many of them carefully recalled Bufong's information. He had defeated the Xiai divine dynasty's crown prince, suppressed many geniuses, and comprehended 3 supreme laws of the universe. Could it be that after comprehending 3 supreme laws, even a demigod could be this powerful? The people of the Titan divine dynasty did not care much about the laws. What they cared about were the barbaric glyphs. The barbaric glyphs were the source of their power, so they did not know how terrifying it was to comprehend 3 supreme laws of the universe. Perhaps it was terrifying, but was it as terrifying as the crown prince's divine dragon barbaric text? Even if he comprehended 3 supreme laws of the universe, he's still a demigod, someone murmured. However, even he himself was not very confident. The cultivation bases of the 4 geniuses who had just attacked Bufong were already the top existences among them. Of course, that might be because they did not use their barbaric glyphs. Still, it was incredible. The four geniuses rolled over and got to their feet. They were all high-grade gods, so their resilience was extraordinary. Naturally, they would not be easily knocked down by Bufang. Rumble. The four of them rolled over, their eyes bloodshot. The barbaric glyphs on their bodies began to wriggle. The barbaric glyphs were composed of all kinds of patterns. Inspired by many savage beasts, the ancestors of the Titan divine dynasty drew the savage beasts into barbaric glyphs and engraved them on their bodies in order to gain great strength and possess the attributes of savage beasts. For example, the four geniuses in front of them. The barbaric glyphs on their bodies were a lion, an elephant, a cheetah, and a giant crocodile. As the barbaric glyphs were activated, their bodies also skyrocketed. Although they were not as tall as the Crown Prince's 1,000-feet tall body, they had grown to thousands of feet. Each of them looked down at Bufang. I'm going to cut you into 1,000 pieces. The pigs of the Xiaoyi divine dynasty. One of the geniuses roared. The barbaric glyphs on his body shone brightly, and the shadow of a ferocious elephant seemed to appear behind him. His arms seemed to have gathered the strength of a ferocious elephant and turned into a long trunk of a ferocious elephant, sweeping fiercely towards Bufang. Bang! The ground was hit, and a huge rock was lifted up, flying towards Bufang. However, the law of space lingered around Bufang's body, and the boulder seemed to pass through Bufang's body. It flew in the direction of the temple guardian. Crack! The temple keeper raised his withered hand. With a pinch, the boulder was crushed into powder. That genius broke out in a cold sweat. Fortunately, the temple keeper did not cause trouble for him. Then, he vented his anger on Bufang. Damn shy pigs. The few monstrous geniuses attacked at the same time, smashing their fists down. His fists were like small hills, making one's scalp go numb just by looking at them. Boom! The place where the four fists collided. An explosion broke out. However, Bufang was unscathed, and he stood where he was. The invisible power of the law floated around him, blocking all the dust, power, and noise. Borrowing the power of barbaric glyphs. Interesting. Bufang's face was pale, but that was because he was weak. After all, although the power of a heaven god was suppressed, it was still wreaking havoc in his body. However, it was not a big deal. Although he couldn't make his body bigger, he was still able to control it. However, in terms of strength, Bufang was not afraid at all. He lightly kicked the ground with the tip of his foot. Then, he soared into the sky. A genius roared. The shadow of a wild lion emerged, gathered on his fist, and smashed it at Bufang. Bufang did not dodge. Instead, he swept out his Taotai arm. His small arm collided with a mountain-like fist. Boom! 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 The genius's pupils constricted, and he howled miserably. Every joint in his giant arm had exploded, and a mist of blood filled the air. His body shrank in an instant, and he flew backward, coughing up blood. In just a flash, the remaining three geniuses were also crushed. For Bufang, this was just a normal operation. He raised his head. He looked at the keeper in the distance. The latter was still indifferent. The corner of Bufang's mouth twitched slightly. A ripping sound rang out. Little Hu flew back to Bufang's shoulder. Smoke was rising from her mouth, and her head was bowed as if she was tired of playing. Bufang rubbed Little Hu's head, took out an explosive meatball, and stuffed it into her mouth. All right, leave the rest to me. Bufang did not want to delay any longer. The Titan divine dynasty was getting weirder and weirder. Of course, these cute geniuses were an exception. The Crown Prince stood where he was, looking proudly at Bufang. The supreme law of the universe and the divine dragon barbaric glyphs had made his strength close to that of a high-grade god king. Although it was beyond his expectation that Bufang could defeat the four geniuses, he did not care. On the other hand, that fox was too slippery. As the Crown Prince, he felt a little ashamed that he could not kill a fox. It seems that you are not completely useless. You do have some ability to defeat the Crown Prince of the Xiaoyi Divine Dynasty. The Titan Crown Prince grinned. Then, he disappeared from where he was as if he had teleported. His body was huge, but his movements were very agile. In a flash, he appeared at Bu Fong's side and slapped him. He wanted to kill Bu Fong as if he was swatting a mosquito. The giants of the Titan Divine Dynasty used this method to deal with the existences of the other divine dynasties, and it was particularly useful. He could kill a mosquito with every hit. Bu Fong glanced indifferently at the Crown Prince. The law of space filled the air. He stepped into the void. The next moment, he appeared in another place. The void kept tearing. Bu Fong seemed to be walking casually. However, every time he walked, he appeared in a different place. The Crown Prince kept waving his big hand in the air. Suddenly, Bu Fong's figure appeared at the side of the Crown Prince's cheek. He was so tiny that he was no different from a mosquito. The Crown Prince rolled his eyes. Then, he raised his palm. Suddenly, he slapped down. However, Bu Fong stepped into the void again and disappeared. Smack! The Crown Prince's slap landed on his own face. The loud noise was so loud that it hurt the people around him. The experts on the battleship were already silent. They didn't know what to say. Was the Crown Prince too stupid? He was actually fooled by the pig of the Xiai Divine Dynasty. But that guy's power was too bizarre. That's the law of space, one of the supreme laws of the universe. So strong, so agile. It's simply the nemesis of us Titans. Yes, the law of space is definitely our nemesis. Someone took a deep breath and said. The Crown Prince covered his face with one hand. His eyes were red with anger. Don't run away if you have guts, he growled. Bu Fong gave the Crown Prince a look as if he was looking at an idiot. Then, his figure flashed and appeared in front of the Crown Prince's forehead. He flicked his finger. Bam! The Crown Prince's eyes seemed to glaze over. Blood burst out of his forehead in an instant. His whole body flew backward. His head seemed to be exploding. Bam! The Crown Prince fell to the ground, his 10,000-foot-tall body shrinking in an instant. He fell to the ground in a daze, unable to move. Just now, Bu Fong's short-lived move made him feel a chill all over. The moment Bu Fong flicked his finger, 4 wheels of law emerged around him. Space, life, destruction, transmigration. Those were the 4 supreme laws of the universe. 4? Didn't he say that he had only comprehended 3 supreme laws of the universe? The Crown Prince was defeated in an instant, and it was a dramatic defeat. Bu Fong glanced at the Crown Prince lying on the ground and twitched the corner of his mouth slightly. So cute, he kept saying. The surrounding geniuses were all dumbfounded. The Crown Prince is cute. Oh, all of a sudden, Bu Fong felt a terrible pressure erupt. He frowned. He tilted his head and looked into the distance. There, the keeper of the temple finally moved. The latter raised his head, revealing an old face. His face and eyes glowed with a black luster. That look in his eyes, Bu Fong's heart skipped a beat. He confirmed the look in his eyes, boom. In the sky, the warship exploded all of a sudden. 2 figures appeared on both sides of Bu Fong at some point, blocking off Bu Fong's retreat. They were the 2 guards sent by the Divine Emperor, who followed the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince's eyes narrowed. The guards sent by the Divine Emperor had actually made a move at this moment. What surprised him even more was that the appearance of the 2 guards changed in an instant. Crack! Crack! A black aura rose and fell. The faces of the 2 guards were full of greed. They fixed their eyes on Bu Fong, and black insect-scaled knives materialized in their hands. Their auras locked onto Bu Fong in an instant. Sure enough, compared to these Titan Divine Dynasty experts whose bodies were possessed by soul demons, those geniuses and monstrous geniuses were truly adorable. Bu Fong breathed a sigh of relief. The next moment, the knife light tore through the air. 2 black insect-scale knives slashed toward Bu Fong in an instant. The fighting prowess of a numbered soul demon devoured Bu Fong in an instant. Chapter 1547. Soul Demons. Soul Demons. At this moment, The pupils of the surrounding geniuses and the crown prince constricted, and they sucked in cold breaths. Nowadays, who in the Titan divine dynasty did not know soul demons? These bizarre and fearsome creatures were filled with nightmarish terror. They could possess humans and copy their abilities, which made them very strange. So far, no one had found a way to fight them. The only way was to crush them completely with great strength. However, when they reached the level of numbered soul demons, they could no longer be killed by great strength. This was a problem that gave the Titan divine dynasty a headache. However, no one expected that there would be soul demons among them. The crown prince shuddered. There was a look of horror in his eyes. I can't believe he stayed with soul demons for so long. Soul demons are evil and will devour humans. They are fated enemies of humans, and yet he allowed them to stay with him for so long. I'm so lucky that I didn't die. These two soul demons were numbered soul demons, about the level of high-grade god kings, and they were very fearsome. The surrounding geniuses of the Titan divine dynasty were all dumbfounded. Chills ran through their bodies, and they did not know what to say. Terrible killing intent exploded out of them. Standing where he was, Bufong felt an evil aura coming at him. He narrowed his eyes. He glanced at the two guards who were charging at him in an instant. The two guards did very well. However, Bufong was not surprised, because he had noticed their strangeness before. When he ate the oyster pancake, they would frown in disgust. Needless to say, they were also anorexic, and they were also hidden soul demons. That was why Bufong thought these geniuses were very cute. They did not even know they were surrounded by soul demons. The crown prince, in particular, was so cute that he looked a little stupid. Rumble. The eyes of the two guards turned ferocious in an instant. Holding their insect scale knives, they tore through the sky and slashed at Bufong. Both of them slashed out with their knives, trying to cut each other in half. The terrifying black energy blew away the surrounding sovereigns and geniuses. These two soul demons were not ordinary. After all, they were numbered soul demons. They sealed the space in an instant, not giving Bufong a chance to escape. Bufong naturally sensed it as well. The space was tangled up by the black gas like vines, so he didn't choose to break through the void and escape. Instead, he stood where he was. His expression gradually turned cold. Bufong did not have a good impression of soul demons. These disgusting creatures. Boom! Bufong raised his hand. Energy flowed on his Tao-Tai arm as he grabbed the insect-scaled knife. Bang! The place where Bufong stood instantly exploded with a shocking explosion. Rumbling sounds resounded incessantly, as if the world was about to be destroyed. It was extremely terrifying. The surrounding geniuses sucked in a breath of cold air. Run! This is a numbered soul demon. A high-grade god king. Let's quickly report this to the god emperor. Let's go. Your Highness, leave quickly. That foreigner is dead for sure. At this moment, the surrounding geniuses had no time to care about Bufong. They hurriedly pulled the crown prince and were about to flee. He. It smells so good. It smells so good. Soul 13 told us to catch him. Otherwise, I'm going to eat him now. I can't help but drool. The two guards looked extremely terrifying. Their faces were covered in dense scales that would cause one's hair to stand on end. Swoosh! A gust of wind blew past. Bufong grabbed the insect scale knife with both hands. He glanced indifferently at the battlefield. The two soul demons narrowed their eyes. Soul 13 said this human is injured. Let's end this quickly. The two soul demons exchanged a glance and communicated with each other mentally. Then they grabbed the insect scale knives and swung them horizontally. Boom! A clanging sound rang out. Although the insect scale knives did not look sharp, they could actually cut through iron as if it were mud. The ground was cut open by them. Bufong's figure kept moving like a ghost, dodging the attacks of the sabers. The crown prince's pupils constricted. He seemed to be still in disbelief. The two guards his father had sent to him were actually soul demons. What was going on? Didn't father notice the abnormality of these two guards? How many more of these soul demons were there in the Titan divine dynasty? That guy is going to die, isn't he? The Crown Prince's pupils flickered, and his gaze fell on Buffon. I don't care if he's going to die or not. If we don't leave now, that soul demon will kill that guy, and we'll all die. One of the geniuses was trembling all over as he pulled the Crown Prince and was about to flee. The Crown Prince came to his senses. Without hesitation, he left immediately. He was the Crown Prince, the future heir of the Titan divine dynasty. His talent was extraordinary, and he was bound to become an existence who stood at the peak of the chaotic universe in the future. He could not die here. Suddenly, the faces of the Crown Prince and the others turned very pale. When they were about to break through the void and leave, however, he discovered that the surrounding space had been sealed by strands of black aura. The black smoke seemed to have turned this place into a barrier. No matter what they did, they could not escape. The Crown Prince's pupils constricted. A look of despair came over the faces of the surrounding geniuses. What should they do? Were they going to die here? It was supposed to be a mission to capture a foreigner. So how did it turn into a desperate situation where they were being slaughtered by soul demons? There are soul demons around here. The Crown Prince's face was deathly pale. The two soul demon guards were fighting Buffon, so they could not possibly be paying attention to them. Then who was it that sealed off the surrounding void? That meant there was another soul demon hiding around them. Who was it? Could it be one of the geniuses here? The Crown Prince focused his eyes and glanced warily at the geniuses around him. The geniuses and geniuses of the Titan divine dynasty also showed looks of horror. They had also thought of the Crown Prince's idea. All of a sudden, everyone looked at each other warily. Perhaps the existence that was only one step away from them was the evil soul demon. In the distance, under the pagoda of the divine temple, the old keeper, who was sitting cross-legged, raised his head slightly. His eyes were black, and his pupils were scarlet. The corners of his mouth were curled upward into a cold smile. He sneered as he looked at the geniuses who were fighting with each other. Sure enough, humans are a bunch of stupid creatures. They can only be food. He turned his eyes and rested them on Buffon. The human named by his Soul 13 was indeed a top-notch ingredient. The aroma emanating from his body was simply too mesmerizing. The temple keeper opened his mouth, and saliva dripped down from his mouth. Unfortunately, this human was going to be sent to Soul 13. Soul 13 was now the spiritual leader of the soul demons. He was destined to become a soul overlord. As the keeper, he did not dare to disobey him. However, if he could not eat Buffon, then the keeper turned his eyes, his scarlet pupils fixed on the geniuses and the Crown Prince in the distance. Since I can't eat delicious food, I can still eat some ordinary delicacies. The temple keeper gulped. His frail body slowly stood up from his seat. He was trembling as if a gust of wind could blow him away. Oh! As the keeper rose to his feet, the Crown Prince and the others immediately felt a terror that made their scalps go numb. This aura. The Crown Prince and the others turned to look in the direction of the keeper. They immediately saw a nightmarish scene. His scarlet pupils were like boundless pools of blood, exuding a fear that made one's soul wail. The fear spread to the Crown Prince and the others, driving them to despair. How is this possible? Is the keeper also possessed by a soul demon? Good heavens! Why did the keeper of the divine temple become a soul demon? What happened to the Titan divine dynasty? Why are soul demons everywhere? The geniuses all began to wail. Suddenly, they felt a sense of despair spreading from the depths of their souls. This despair caused them to not dare to move. The keeper is actually a soul demon? The Crown Prince was dumbfounded. Then, the barbaric glyphs on his body began to wriggle, and he threw a punch at the void, trying to break the seal. Then, he fled. Unfortunately, the black smoke was like a dragon. Even though he had unleashed his barbaric glyphs and the law of destruction, he could not shake it at all. Buzz, in just a flash, the keeper approached and came to the Crown Prince's side in a flash. Half of his face was covered with insect scales, making him look as terrible as a demon from the abyss. The crown prince opened his mouth, but he found that he could not say anything. Food! The keeper grinned and took a deep breath. His twisted face was filled with an intoxicated look. Rumble! A rumble rang out. A terrible explosion broke out. The two soul demons who attacked Bufong were knocked flying away. When they fell to the ground, they caused the ground to crack. 4 wheels of law wheeled around Bufong. Each of them exuded extreme terror, and each law was the supreme law of the universe. 4 supreme laws of the universe. At this moment, Bufong seemed to have become the focus of the whole world. The crown prince's pupils constricted. Sure enough, he was right. This foreigner had really comprehended 4 supreme laws of the universe. As the Titan crown prince, no matter how little he valued the supreme laws of the universe, he understood how terrifying it was to comprehend 4 supreme laws of the universe. That was completely. He's not a king human. Bufong frowned slightly. These soul demons were very difficult to deal with. After unleashing 4 supreme laws of the universe, Bufong's fighting prowess had become much stronger. At the same time, his divine sense surged out to suppress everything. Impossible. Soul 13 said this human is injured. But he doesn't look injured at all. One of the soul demon's pupils constricted. 4 supreme laws of the universe. Is this the ultimate genius among humans? The other soul demon also took a deep breath. Even a keeper could not help but look sideways. Little Hu dashed out. She lay on Bufong's shoulder. The power of the law permeated her body, making her feel very comfortable. Bufong clasped his hands behind his back. He looked very calm and carefree. The 2 soul demon guards moved. Like shadows, they tore through the sky. They did not have the power of the law, but after devouring the guard, they had comprehended the guard's divine abilities and fighting skills. They went straight toward Bufong. They were going to use the human way to deal with humans. Kill! Rumble! A terrible noise rang out, and the surroundings of the divine temple seemed to be on the verge of being destroyed. Bufong looked at the 2 approaching guards. The corner of Bufong's mouth twitched slightly. Then he shook his hand. This is the most convenient way to deal with soul demons. Bufong focused his eyes. His true energy condensed into a walk. Around Bufong, one ingredient after another floated in midair. With a shake of his hand, an ordinary kitchen knife appeared in front of him. Yes, it was a very ordinary kitchen knife. What is that guy going to do? The keeper froze. The surrounding geniuses, as well as the crown princes, were also stunned. The 2 soul demons narrowed their eyes. Who cares what he's going to do? Tear him apart. Rumble. The 2 guards exploded. They approached in an instant. Bufong was still fiddling with the ingredients in his hand, looking very calm. Little Hu, spit at them. Bufong said lightly. He did not even look up and was still processing the ingredients. Little Hu's eyes lit up. Gulp. Lying on Bufong's shoulder, her cheeks suddenly bulged. Rumble. Her body turned blood red in an instant. That was the heaven god's blood flowing in her body. Tap, 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 tap. Little Hu's mouth opened wide. In an instant, a blue flame burst out. One explosive meatball after another shot toward the soul demon guards. What are these things? The explosive meatballs Little Hu spat out were not very powerful. But these 2 numbered soul demons were not afraid of them at all. They waved their insect scale knives. They tore through the air in an instant. The meatballs that were shooting toward them at high speed were instantly minced into pieces. However, the moment they were minced, a rich aroma exploded in the air. Rumble. A huge aroma bomb instantly enveloped the 2 soul demons. Blarg. The 2 soul demons flew backward, smashed to the ground with a thud, and rolled on the ground. Even when they got to their feet, they lay prone on the ground and kept vomiting. Their stomachs could not stop cramping. The geniuses in the distance were dumbfounded. The crown prince was even more dumbfounded. Those terrifying soul demons were actually sent flying away by a few meatballs? How could this work? Chapter 1548. The meatballs could make the soul demons kneel on the ground and vomit? How is that possible? At this moment, Not only the crown prince, but all the people were dumbfounded. There were big question marks hanging over their heads. The keeper's scarlet pupils swirled. Is this human food? That disgusting thing. The keeper's scale-covered face twitched. Yes, the crown prince clearly saw that the keeper's cheeks were trembling. What did this mean? It meant that Bufang's method was really working. The meatballs could restrain these soul demons. Oh heavens, oh earth. I've finally found a way to restrain these soul demons. Is this meatballs? The first time he saw them, he felt that they were different. They were like the stars in the sky, shining brilliantly and looking very beautiful. Now, he just wanted to sink into the ocean of meatballs and swim in it. Human food is really a headache. The keeper's eyes narrowed, and killing intent flashed in them. The aroma of the meatballs made his stomach churn. Looking at these geniuses in front of him, he felt that they were tasteless. Even though they, as soul demons, had sealed their six senses, the aroma still poured into their bodies like maggots, seeped into their nostrils, and seemed to entangle their souls. Chefs deserved to be killed. The keeper opened his mouth. Black smoke spewed out of it, and his killing intent surged. Blarg! The two guards lay prone on the ground, vomiting so much that they almost threw up their bile. It was so uncomfortable that their whole bodies seemed to be wrinkled. The crown prince and the others were shocked. How could the meatballs be so useful? Bufang hovered in midair. Holding a kitchen knife in his hand, he was cooking unhurriedly. With a flick of his finger, the divine flame fell, burning everything and twisting the void. Sizzle. As Bufang cooked, the vomiting soul demons became weaker and weaker, and they could not move at all. They tried to stand up from the ground several times, but the aroma surged over and made them lie on the ground again. Their stomachs were cramping, and they felt as if their whole stomachs were about to be squeezed out. What the F***? They could not believe that the numbered soul demons were so restrained by human food. This should not be happening. Although they hated human food, it was impossible for them to reach the point where they couldn't resist after smelling it. Since when did human food become so strange? Could it be that this chef's food had a special suppressive effect on them? This human was their nemesis? Bufang kept moving. He was stir-frying. He was stir-frying the ingredients. Soon it was time to flip the bowl and pile up the ingredients in a small bowl. Steam rose up, emitting a rich fragrance. Because Bufang had added spices into it, the smell lingered in the air. The surrounding monstrous geniuses were intoxicated. It smelled so good. The crown prince's eyes were blurred. It was the first time they had smelled such fragrant food. Blurg, the temple guard, raised his hand and covered his mouth. His blood-red pupils constricted. His entire body was shaking uncontrollably. He sealed off his six senses, and his nose could no longer smell anything. But that smell was still pervasive. It was as if a large hand was wrapping around their souls. Little Hu was tired of vomiting. Lying on Bufang's shoulder, her blood-red fur had returned to its snow-white appearance. Green smoke was escaping from her mouth. The two guards finally crawled up from the ground, trembling. The smell of the beef meatballs had dissipated. They were finally able to move. However, they were horrified to find that their legs were a little weak, and they could not move at all. Their legs were weak because of the smell. The two guards looked at each other and saw the killing intent in each other's eyes. This chef must die. Soul 13 asked us to bring him over alive, but we can't do that now. Let's kill this human first. The guards' eyes were full of ferociousness. The two guards seemed to have reached a consensus. The next moment, they shot out in a flash. They approached Bufang. Bufang boldly raised his eyes and glanced at the two soul demons. His face was calm, and he was not moved at all. The four supreme laws of the universe had fused into the dish. That made the aroma even more full of strange meanings. That was why these soul demons' legs were weak, because of the smell. Bufang was just trying it out. Now it seemed that, hey, food is really omnipotent. Bufang's face was expressionless. He rolled up the sleeves of his white robe, revealing his fair arms. Then he kneaded the noodles. Strands of noodle wrapped around his body like silk threads. Bufang wanted to cook a dish that was full of fragrance. It might not be very delicious, but it would be fine as long as it was fragrant enough. Bufong cooked this dish with the goal of creating an aroma bomb. What he needed was an aroma bomb that could restrain these soul demons. Strands of noodles swirled around his body. Little Hu watched happily, his hands dancing as if he was dancing with the movements of the noodles. Bufong pinched one end of a strand of noodles and took out 2 chopsticks. The chopsticks seemed to have turned into long needles, hooked on the noodles, and then interwove them together as if they were clothes. As an excellent chef, as the god of cooking who wanted to stand at the top of the food chain in the fantasy world, he had to be proficient in everything. He also had to know how to embroider. Soon, a square flatbread was embroidered by Bufong. The flatbread was divided into 2 layers, intertwined with each other, which looked quite strange. Bufong poured golden oil into the transparent wok condensed of true energy. The divine fire burned beneath it, causing the oil in the transparent wok to boil. Steam billowed out of the wok. Bufong glanced indifferently at the approaching soul demons in the distance. He twitched the corner of his mouth. Then, he put the flatbread into the wok. Sizzle. As soon as the flatbread entered the wok, an aroma immediately gushed out. Oh! The 2 approaching soul demons immediately smelled the aroma of food wafting into their nostrils. Their pupils constricted, and they blocked their 6 senses. Rumble. It was as if a mountain was pressing down on them. Once again, they were pressed to the ground by the aroma. Blar, damn it. Tears welled up in the eyes of both guards. If you have the guts, don't cook. Let's have a fair fight. The 2 soul demons were mad with rage. When their anger reached its peak, they could not help but vomit again. This smell, why is it so smelly? What is Bufong doing? The crown prince and the others were slightly confused. They took advantage of the moment when the keeper was entangled by the aroma. They ran like crazy and hid behind Bufong. Each and every one of them stood trembling. Now, only Bufong could save them. These soul demons were afraid of the aroma. As long as Bufong was alive, he would be alive. If Bufong died, they would also die. Bufong glanced at these geniuses. He did not say anything. These geniuses are too cute. Sizzle. The wok of oil was boiling, and some pale yellow foam was rolling. Bufong reached out his chopsticks and picked up the flatbread in the wok. With a gentle shake, he drained the oil. Then, Bufong put the flatbread in a porcelain bowl. There was only one kind of delicacy that could be called an aroma bomb. It was a delicacy that would wake one up even when one was asleep. Not only was it convenient, but it could also make one salivate. All he needed to do was pour boiling water into it, and it would turn into a rich aroma bomb. Bufong took a deep breath. He picked up a blue and white porcelain bowl. He put the golden fried flatbread at the bottom of the bowl. Then he poured the ingredients he had stirred and cooked into the bowl. With a thought in his mind, numerous porcelain jars floated around him. The crown prince and the others were shocked by what they saw. That dazzling equipment dazzled them. Bufong is indeed a professional. The aroma disappeared for the time being. The soul demons rose to their feet again. Their eyes were filled with ferocity. The keeper's old face was exuding extreme anger. Do it now. Don't let him cook that dish. The keeper said coldly. He didn't know why, but there was a surge of fear in his heart. If Bufong cooked that dish, they would be doomed. That was his intuition. Bufong glanced indifferently at the soul demons. Little Hu stood in front of him. She put her hands on her waist, then opened her mouth wide. Her foxy lips puffed up. Tap, 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 she fired a volley of shots. The meatballs exploded. The aroma made the soul demons feel numb and weak again. They could not even spit it out. This was simply, damn it. This was the most uncomfortable battle they had ever encountered. The keeper's eyes narrowed. In an instant, insect scales covered his whole face. He tore through the void and came out. At this moment, he could no longer hide. He had devoured the keeper and comprehended his supreme law of the universe, the law of space. In the blink of an eye, he appeared at Little Hu's side. Little Hu froze for a moment. She, who was happily shooting, came to an abrupt stop. because her neck was choked by a hand. Little Hu's eyes widened. "Stop, or I'll crush this little fellow," the keeper said coldly. His eyes were fixed on Bufang. Bufang's movements froze. The expressions of the crown prince and the others, who were hiding behind Bufang, changed dramatically, and then they all turned pale. Without food, how could they be a match for these keepers? The keepers were the strongest existences in the Titan Divine Dynasty after the Titan Divine Emperor. Each of them was a top expert among God Kings. Bufang slowly raised his head, glancing at the keeper of the temple. The latter's face was covered with insect scales, which made Bufang look at him with disgust. "Little Hu, stop playing," Bufang said. The crown prince and the others froze. The temple guard was also taken aback. The two soul demon guards, whose legs were trembling, were stunned as well. Little Hu, whose neck was clutched by the keeper, let out a peal of laughter. Then she opened her mouth wide. There was a gush of blood in her throat. Hiss! The keeper felt a burning pain in his palm, and his stomach began to spasm. Little Hu's mouth was wide open. Her hair turned blood red. Then a super large meatball slowly came out her mouth. Rumble! The keeper's bloody pupils constricted. He loosened his grip on Little Hu's neck, tore through the sky, and plunged into the void. In a flash, he had fled far away. The two soul demon guards were stunned. Bam! They were swallowed by the meatball, which had grown larger. Rumble! The meatball exploded. A rich aroma filled the air. Once again, the two soul demon guards lay prone on the ground and vomited. Their bodies could not move at all. They were like worms crawling on the ground, twitching. The corner of Bufang's mouth twitched slightly. His hand shook. He took out a clay pot from the heaven and earth farmland. Then he slapped the lid off the pot, and a sour and refreshing smell wafted out. "There's a world in the old jar," Bufang murmured. Then he reached out a hand and grabbed a vegetable tube from the old jar. With a shake of the black kitchen knife, he cut the vegetable tube into slices and poured them into a blue and white porcelain bowl. Spices were sprinkled in, and the boiling spring of life was poured into the bowl. The crown prince and the others were a little confused because they found that Bufang's cooking seemed a little different. What is he trying to do? Is this how all the noodles are made nowadays? The blue and white porcelain bowl was covered with a large bowl, which looked quite simple. What kind of dish is this? The crown prince and the others were suddenly curious. Little Hu landed back on Bufang's shoulder and sniffed. Then he raised his paws and scratched his nose. A monstrous black aura emanated from the keeper's body. Gradually, his body began to change. His flesh began to swell. Crack! Crack! Insect scales rapidly covered his body, and soon the keeper in front of him had turned into a behemoth. The countless scarlet eyes made one's scalp go numb. The crown prince and the others all held their breath and shivered. How terrifying! A top-numbered soul demon? The corner of Bufang's mouth twitched slightly. His slender fingers tapped the lid of the blue and white porcelain bowl, making a crisp sound. Then his fingers stopped. He opened his hand and grabbed the upside-down ceramic bowl. Then he slowly lifted the lid of the bowl. Beams of golden light burst out of the blue and white porcelain bowl. It was like a blazing sun. A numbered soul demon? There's nothing that a bowl of instant noodles can't solve. If there is, I'll make 2 bowls. The corner of Bufang's mouth twitched. Rumble. A wave of aroma immediately rolled out of the porcelain bowl in Bufang's hand. Chapter 1549. Instant Noodles? The Crown Prince and the others were dumbfounded. What kind of delicacy was this? Why had they never heard of it before? However, this fragrance, this sourness was really indescribable. It was simply too fragrant. It was as if a heavy hammer had struck one's soul and made one's whole body tremble. It was a delicacy that stirred one's heart. He took a deep breath, and the fragrance immediately burrowed into his nostrils, melodious and mellow. It was sour, sweet, bitter, and spicy. The Crown Prince's eyes became moist. He felt as if he was intoxicated by the fragrance. Even in the face of the extremely terrifying titled soul demon, his heart became fearless. The bowl of noodles in Bufong's hand made him fearless. It was a magical bowl of noodles. It shone with a dazzling golden light. A bowl that could glow was very magical. The surrounding people were in an uproar. However, in Bufong's view, this was just a normal operation. The fragrance lingered in the air, and the steam rose into the sky in circles before dispersing. It was a very strong fragrance, but it did not seem to be enough. This deficiency made Bufong furrow his brows. The fragrance was being released to the extreme. It kept dispersing. In the distance, the keeper, who had transformed into a huge, terrifying titled soul demon, was being suppressed by the fragrance and forced to retreat. Human food disgusted him, but not to this extent. However, the food cooked by Bufong was extremely horrible, so disgusting that he wanted to tear Bufong to pieces. However, when he smelled the fragrance, his stomach churned, and he wanted to vomit. He could not even exert his strength. Down below, the two soul demon guards, who were lying motionless on the ground, had fainted. Yes, they had fainted because of the fragrance. To them, this was an incredible thing. Such a thing had never happened before. They would be disgusted by food, but this was the first time they had fainted because of the smell. Boom! The keeper fell to the ground. His body was extremely huge, and his face looked ferocious. His eyes were filled with ferocity, and his numerous eyeballs were rolling around as he fixed his gaze on Bufong. This loud hand pickled cabbage noodles. I always feel that something is missing. Bufong was deep in thought as he looked at the bowl of noodles in his hand. Suddenly, his eyes lit up. Then he raised his hand. Silver divine fire burned on his palm. Buzz, chi, chi, chi. The scorching heat spread out. In the next moment, a spirit beast egg floated in Bufong's hand. Under the attack of Bufong's divine sense, it cracked open. The egg liquid fell into Bufong's hand and Bufong's palm. Chi, chi, chi. Cooking a poached egg with his palm was a piece of cake for Bufong. After cooking the poached egg, Bufong put into a blue and white porcelain bowl. Finally, this dish was perfect. The rich aroma of poached eggs mixed with the aroma of instant noodles was like a storm on the vast ocean, making people feel despair. It smelled so good. Behind Bufong, the crown prince and the geniuses narrowed their eyes and craned their necks to sniff the aroma. The aroma tickled their noses and made them restless. Their saliva was almost flowing out of their mouths. Little Hu's eyes were wide. She grabbed Bufong's shoulder with her claws and couldn't wait to stick out her tongue. Don't worry. Bufong stroked Little Hu's head. It's useless to be anxious. I won't let you eat the instant noodles. Bufong said, Little Hu, what happened to the trust between a man and a fox? Don't you need me to kill him? Little Hu was a little sad. The aroma of egg and instant noodles converged to form a storm that seemed to scatter the temple guard. Bufong glanced at the two soul demon guards on the ground. With a thought, he flicked his finger. Immediately, the divine flame turned into an arrow and shot out at an extremely fast speed. In an instant, it fell like a comet. Boom! The ground suddenly exploded, emitting two explosive sounds. The two powerful numbered soul demons were devoured by the divine flame and turned into nothingness. Only the black soul demons were left howling in pain. Eventually, they disappeared completely under the burning of the divine flame. Bufong's divine flame had fused with countless laws, so it had a powerful restraining effect on these soul demons. Bufong had known this for a long time. Fragrant food, coupled with the divine flame, Bufong was the nemesis of these soul demons. The crown prince and the others seemed to have realized this as well. The keeper narrowed his eyes. The aroma of the instant noodles made his limbs weak. Bufong held the instant noodles in one hand and controlled the divine flame with the other. The divine fire immediately shot out and turned into a divine dragon. The silver dragon roared as it approached. The void was scorched and emitted a scorching heat. What is this? The keeper narrowed his eyes. He opened his mouth and hissed. The next moment, The insect scales on his body shot out and rushed toward the divine flame. The moment they collided, the insect scales were burned to ashes. Oh! The temple guard roared, and his eyeballs started to roll. Then he sped away. He soared into the sky. He tore through the void. The aroma of the instant noodles was like a ripple spreading out in a mighty circle. Even Bufong could not stand it anymore. He was too familiar with the aroma. Stimulated, he began to salivate even more. Fragrant food is disgusting to these soul demons. So what is this stinky food to them? As he sniffed the aroma of instant noodles, Bufong suddenly thought of a serious question. It had even risen to the level of philosophy. Bufong grabbed a pair of chopsticks and slurped a mouthful of instant noodles. The fried golden noodles were chewy, accompanied by the sour and spicy broth and the fragrant poached egg. When he took a deep breath, he felt as if the noodles had jumped up. Slurp! The broth splashed on his face. Bufong stuck out his tongue and licked the broth into his mouth. The sour and spicy taste made Bufong's lips turn red. Gulp! The people around him were dumbfounded. A mouthful of instant noodles had attracted everyone's attention. Little Hu lay on Bufong's shoulder, his eyes fixed on the noodles. The aroma of instant noodles was too tantalizing. Bufong took a deep breath. The sour and spicy taste was simply heart-wrenching. Little Hu, open your mouth. Bufong decided to give it to Little Hu. Little Hu's eyes lit up instantly. Sure enough, Bufong still loves me. Little Hu was so excited that all his fox fur was standing on end. Bufong handed him the blue and white porcelain bowl. Slurp! Little Hu swallowed the whole bowl. Gulp! The crown prince and the others swallowed their saliva again and watched with eager eyes. They really wanted to eat it. As the crown prince, he had tasted all kinds of delicacies. But at this moment, he would rather exchange delicacies for a mouthful of instant noodles. Bufong's eyes narrowed slightly as he rubbed Little Hu's head. Little Hu's mouth opened wide, as if he was savoring the taste in his mouth. Then, Little Hu's eyes suddenly widened. She opened her mouth wide. The fox's mouth turned red. Little Hu's fur stood on end. A moment later, his 9 foxtails swayed wildly, lashing at the void. Buzz, Little Hu's figure disappeared in an instant. The keeper steadied himself, his eyes fixed on Little Hu. The instant noodles were finished, and he couldn't smell the aroma anymore. He thought this human was a little stupid. If the instant noodles were still there, with the aroma lingering in the air, his strength would be greatly suppressed. But he had lost the instant noodles. What else could this human use to restrain him? Oomph! The temple guard coldly snorted. Then he sped away, turned into a series of afterimages, and approached at full speed. As for Little Hu, he could kill him in an instant. He was just a Little Hu. The crown prince and the others recovered from the temptation of the aroma, and their faces were filled with shock. What did Bufong do? How stupid! How could he let Little Hu eat the food that could suppress the soul demon? If that was the case, how were they going to turn the tables? Even their only hope of turning the tables was gone. Bufong was very calm. The keeper approached Little Hu at full speed, trying to kill Little Hu. Then he would break the chef's 4 limbs so that the chef wouldn't be able to cook anymore. As for the others, he would treat them as food and devour them. He had been guarding this divine temple for a long time, and it had been a long time since he tasted a delicious human. In midair, Little Hu's belly bulged. At this moment, Bufong moved. For wheels of law floated around him. Bufong's figure turned into a thin line and shot forward in an instant. From afar, he approached in a flash. He clenched his Tao-Tai arm and threw a punch at the keeper. The punch was fused with 4 supreme laws of the universe, and its power was unparalleled. You're courting death. The eyes of the temple guards instantly constricted. Then he roared. The next moment, his roar came to an abrupt end. That was because Little Hu opened his mouth. He spat out. Puff! A stream of light approached in a flash. The keeper's eyes narrowed. This was the golden light faded. It was a bowl of instant noodles. The instant noodles approached. Then it suddenly exploded. With a rumble, it exploded in an instant. The billowing aroma instantly enveloped the keeper. This aroma, the keeper's body was almost deformed. His movements, which were about to tear Bufong apart, froze. Bufong's fist approached. It hit the keeper's head with a boom. Bam! The four supreme laws crushed everything. The keeper was blown up by Bufong in midair. With a loud bang, the temple guard's fragments scattered in all directions. Ah, damn human chef. Soul 8 will not let you off. From the exploded body, Soul 8 turned into a wisp of black aura and rushed toward Bufong. Bufong's face was indifferent. He looked at the black aura. It was a primitive soul demon. And to deal with this primitive soul demon, Bufong stretched out his Taotai arm and grabbed the wisp of black soul demon. Sizzle, silver flames spread out of it. Slowly they burned. Before long, the black soul demon was completely twisted by the flames. Burned by the divine flame, the wisp of black soul demon dissipated. He let out a shrill cry. His voice rushed into the clouds as if to tear the sky apart. Oh! The expressions of the crown prince and the others changed dramatically. They gasped and turned to look behind them. There, in the direction of the pagoda, two temple guardians dressed in robes slowly walked out. Crack, crack. Insect scales spread out and covered their bodies. The eyes of the two temple guardians were completely red, and saliva dripped from their mouths. It was an extremely terrifying sight. However, this was just the beginning. The crown prince and the others sucked in their breaths. Bufong slightly furrowed his brows. He turned his head and looked into the distance. The sky there was pitch black. One figure after another floated over. Dad! It's Dad! Ah! The experts of the clans are finally here to save us. The geniuses around the crown prince all cried out excitedly. They knew that their savior had come. But soon, the cries of these geniuses stopped abruptly. Their pupils constricted, and all that was left was a chill spreading from under their feet. In the distant sky, a crowd of experts from the clan stood there. Even their eyes were scarlet. Insect scales were slowly covering their bodies. The crown prince felt as if he had fallen into an ice cave. Bufong frowned. Could it be that I'm right? The Titan divine dynasty has become a kingdom of soul demons? The corner of Bufong's mouth twitched. If that was the case, Bufong glanced at the crown prince behind him. After living in the kingdom of soul demons for so long, these geniuses were really cute. Patter, drool dripped from their mouths as they fixed their eyes on Bufong and the many geniuses behind Bufong. In their eyes, Bufong was like a top delicacy in the world. And now, this top delicacy had actually intruded into their kingdom of soul demons. Then, die. Chapter 1550. Bufong never thought that his casual remark would come true. The once mighty Titan divine dynasty seemed to have really become a soul demon kingdom. A divine dynasty full of soul demons. The mere thought of it was eerie and frightening. Soul demons were terrible creatures, but it was unbelievable to the entire chaotic universe that a divine dynasty had turned into a soul demon kingdom. Moreover, the soul demons seemed to be invading creatures. They were not born in the chaotic universe, but came from another universe. The crown prince and the others were shivering. They could not believe what they were seeing, and they looked around in horror. It was like a nightmare. The top experts of the Titan divine dynasty, the keepers of the temple, had all turned into terrifying numbered soul demons. Not only the keepers, but the pillars of the various clans, the extremely powerful god kings, had all turned into soul demons. What's wrong with this world? The crown prince's eyes were dull. He could not believe what was happening in front of him. Not only him, but the other geniuses also could not believe it. How could they believe it? All of this was beyond common sense. It was not a big deal that the guards sent by the divine emperor had turned into soul demons, but the experts of the various clans, the pillars of the various clans, the patriarchs had also turned into soul demons. This was somewhat terrifying. Bufong breathed a sigh of relief. Little Hood also jumped onto Bufong's shoulder. Seeing so many soul demons made Little Hood shiver. She lay on Bufong's shoulder and did everything with Bufong as the center. In the Titan Divine Dynasty, the clans ruled supreme. The whole Divine Dynasty was made up of clans, and powerful clans had great prestige in the Divine Dynasty. The Tai clan, the Zhou clan, and the other clans were all great clans, and they had produced many experts who shook the Divine Dynasty. Black smoke pervaded the sky. Countless experts had gathered in the sky, blotting out the sun like a large dark cloud. Among the geniuses, some could not believe it. They sped away like mad. "Dad, it's me." The genius roared wildly. He did not want to die. If all this was an illusion, he could survive. But was this really all an illusion? Pucci, a scarlet-eyed expert from the ancient clan, swept past in an instant. He didn't know when, but his arms were already covered in dense insect scales. Insect scales covered his body, and his arm turned into an insect scale blade. The genius from the crumbling clan was instantly sliced into two halves. Bright red blood splattered in the air. "My good son," the soul demon laughed coldly, his face sputtering with blood. The crimson blood made the soul demon look very demonic. His eyes were bloodshot, and he stuck out his tongue to lick the blood. "If it weren't for Soul 13's order, I would have swallowed your good son long ago. You two are like the most delicious delicacies, tempting my old father." Pucci, the genius's body was torn apart by the soul demon, and his soul fled in a panic, only to be devoured by the soul demon with a look of enjoyment on his face. He stuffed it into his mouth. At the same time, the soul demon burped. Cold, scary, dark, oppressive, all kinds of atmospheres suddenly surged forth. Those geniuses were on the verge of collapse. When had they ever encountered such a situation? They could not believe that their former family had turned into an executioner, killing and devouring them. Soul 13 wants to raise pigs. Unfortunately, the arrival of this chef has made him give up on that plan. So many of you are no match for that chef. One of the patriarchs laughed eerily. His body was covered with insect scales, and a black aura was spreading out of him. The crown prince and the others were stunned. Soul 13? Could it be? They thought of something that terrified them even more. Could that Soul 13 be he? These geniuses did not have time to think too much. The experts from the ancient clans who had transformed into soul demons shot toward those geniuses with monstrous, killing intent. They were so excited that they grinned hideously. It was as if they had seen the most delicious food. Those geniuses were already scared out of their wits. They fled in all directions frantically. However, this happened to be what the soul demons wanted. They became the foundation for the soul demons to defeat them one by one. Pucci. One insect-scaled weapon after another swept across the sky. There were knives, swords, spears, and axes. The weapons transformed from insect scales carried terrifying killing intent. They also carried the divine abilities and the power of laws of the experts of the ancient clans. Miserable howls filled the air around the divine temple. At this moment, those geniuses died tragically. The crown prince was in a trance. He glanced at Bufong. Perhaps he was the only one who was calm at the moment. However, no matter how calm he was, his heart was a little chaotic. He knew very well that he could not run around now. The whole Titan Divine Dynasty had become a paradise for soul demons. Perhaps his father was the Titan Divine Emperor. Perhaps he dare not think about it. However, if it was true, perhaps staying by the chef's side was the safest option. This chef's dishes had a restraining effect on these soul demons. Being a chef is really a noble profession. Bufong glanced at the crown prince. He was somewhat surprised that the latter did not flee like the other geniuses. When he looked up, the evil scenes happening around him gave Bufong a shock to his soul. Soul demons are really disgusting. They see humans as food, but Bufong can't see them as food. This is really annoying. Pucci. Blood stained the sky. One by one, the experts slowly surrounded them. They surrounded Bufong, the crown prince, and little Hu. They were the only ones left. The others were all dead. The crown prince's face was pale. Those geniuses who were laughing and talking with him a moment ago were all dead now. The ground was covered with broken corpses. Inside the corpse, there was a black sphere that was expanding and puffing. It was the embryo that gave birth to the soul demons. These soul demons were multiplying too fast. Now it seemed that even if he hid behind Bufong, it would not be safe. There were so many soul demons. Even someone as strong as Bufong and as talented as Bufong were about to die. They should be dead soon. The Crown Prince closed his eyes in despair. Perhaps he was the Crown Prince who had died the most miserable death in the entire chaotic universe. How can I deal with these soul demons? Bufong felt a headache coming on. These creatures are really disgusting and tenacious. I have to think of a way to deal with them. Bufong focused his eyes. He landed hard on the ground. He raised his hand, and his true energy began to gather. Soon, it condensed into a wok. Without a doubt, he decided to continue cooking. Cooking again? The Crown Prince's eyes narrowed. Perhaps this is the only way to restrain these soul demons. The aroma of the dishes has a suppressive effect on these soul demons. It should be able to resist them for some time. The Crown Prince thought to himself, they could take advantage of this time to make the best choice. We can enter the divine temple, the Crown Prince said suddenly. Bufong turned and glanced at him. The divine temple is the divine land of the Titan divine dynasty. There are restrictive spells in it, so these soul demons shouldn't be able to enter, the Crown Prince said. The keepers have all turned into soul demons. Do you think they can't enter? Bufong asked, puzzled. The Crown Prince paused for a moment, then said, only the imperial family can enter the divine temple. We can stay inside and wait for the divine emperor to save us. The Crown Prince's heart was filled with hope. Bufong looked at the solemn Crown Prince and fell silent for a moment. Perhaps this is a way, but entering the divine temple is also a difficult problem. Bufong shook his head and began cooking. The only thing that could save them was cooking. With a thought in his mind, Bufong took out a precious clay pot from the heaven and earth farmland. The earthen jar was tightly sealed. After taking it out, Bufong raised his hand and slapped the clay seal. The Crown Prince and Little Hu both came up to Bufong, looked at the pot, and took deep breaths. Since Bufong dared to take it out at this time, he was absolutely confident that he could suppress these soul demons. Perhaps it was a dish that could emit the ultimate aroma. They took deep breaths. Even if they died, they wanted to be ghosts who died in the aroma. Bufong gave the Crown Prince a strange look. The clay seal was lifted. A wisp of smoke that seemed to be a little dark spread. Oh, the Crown Prince's face darkened. A wisp of smoke burrowed into his nostrils. He almost died from the stench. This smell. The Crown Prince's face turned blue. His stomach was churning. Why did he take out such a stinky thing instead of a dish that could emit the ultimate aroma? What was Bufong thinking? Only fragrance could suppress these soul demons, so how could a stench suppress them? Sure enough, Bufong slapped the clay seal, and the stench wafted out. Not only did the surrounding soul demons not show a look of disgust, but they were also intoxicated. It smells so good. It smells so King good. The soul demons in the surroundings were all shouting, "What is this?" The Crown Prince could not help but pinch his nose with his fingers. "This is stinky tofu," Bufong said. His expression remained the same in the face of the stench. If he could not even withstand this little stench, how could he become the god of cooking who stood at the top of the food chain in the fantasy world? The corner of Bufong's mouth twitched slightly. Then he shook his hand. His divine sense surged. The wok filled with true energy was boiling, and the golden oil inside was churning. Black chunks of tofu filled with juice flew out of the clay pot one after another. Plop, plop. They fell into the wok like dumplings. The stinky tofu was immediately covered with a layer of pale gold. What are you going to do? The Crown Prince found that it was useless even if he covered his nose. The stench seemed to penetrate deep into his soul. What the F***CK? Do I have to die because of the stench? Why is this chef not playing by the rules? However, he felt that Bufong was not a fool. He could not possibly make some delicacies to satisfy these soul demons. Could it be that this stinky tofu has a universe in it? The crown prince narrowed his eyes. Glug, glug. Bufong's expression remained the same as he watched the stinky tofu tumble in the wok. Foxy was already lying on Bufong's shoulder with her white belly facing up, looking like a dead fish that had died of stench. All right, Bufong focused his eyes. He put one hand behind his back and raised the other. The wok in front of him was boiling. It was as if he was playing a touching ballad. Then he flicked his finger. Immediately, the wok of oil splashed. Among them, some black and gold stinky tofu flew out and sped toward the void. The eyes of the surrounding soul demons narrowed. The scarlet pupils of the two keepers constricted. All the soul demons' eyes were fixed on the stinky tofu. It was human food, something that would make them sick. But why? This human food was exuding an irresistible temptation. It was as if Bufong had taken off his clothes and was standing in front of them, looking extremely tempting. Glug! All the experts who had transformed into soul demons swallowed hard. Their saliva dripped all over the ground. Finally, they could not stand it anymore. Rumble! The black and gold, stinky tofu, which was emitting hot steam, flew out. One soul demon after another madly rushed toward the stinky tofu. In order to get the stinky tofu, one of the soul demons was extremely fast. Perhaps he was an expert in movement techniques. His scale-covered palm grabbed the stinky tofu in an instant. Hey! The soul demon laughed wildly. However, his laughter stopped abruptly. He turned his head and glanced behind him. A large group of soul demons was madly rushing toward him. With quick reflexes, he quickly stuffed the stinky tofu into his mouth. As he chewed, he opened his mouth and spewed out a foul stench. The pure stench intoxicated them. Don't worry, everyone has it. The corner of Bufong's mouth twitched slightly as he plucked the strings of a zither. One stinky tofu after another exploded in the wok, shooting out like streams of black and gold light. The soul demons fought frantically for the stinky tofu. The two keepers had strong willpower, but they felt that something was wrong. That black gold stinky tofu was definitely not that simple. They suppressed the desire in their hearts and glanced at the soul demon who had swallowed the stinky tofu. Suddenly, their blood-red eyes suddenly froze. The soul demons who had eaten the stinky tofu were all dead. Each and every one of them was burning with a silver flame. The flames burned them. Very quickly, it was burned to ashes. However, even though they were completely reduced to ashes, the faces of the soul demons were still intoxicated by the stench. The crown prince was dumbfounded. The surrounding soul demons were also horrified. This stinky tofu was poisonous. Many soul demons wanted to refuse the stinky tofu. However, Bufong was neither hurried nor slow. As if he was plucking the strings of a zither, he threw the stinky tofu out. One after another, stinky tofu shot out of the wok. Then, he flew toward the soul demons. To soul demons, the stinky tofu was like a deadly tofu. They wanted to refuse. However, he couldn't resist the temptation of the stinky tofu. Their hearts were against it, but their bodies were very honest. Slurp, slurp. One soul demon after another swallowed the stinky tofu. Then, it was burned to ashes by the silver flame. Their faces were filled with intoxication. The scene was extremely bizarre. Chapter 1551. The Crown Prince's mouth was wide open, and he kept breathing, even though what poured into his mouth was the stench emitted by the stinky tofu that the chef had mentioned. Disgusting? It was disgusting, and the stench was so bad that it made his soul throb. However, after discovering the effect of the stinky tofu, he felt an inexplicable excitement. As he watched the soul demons explode like fireworks under the effect of the stinky tofu, he felt his pores relax. It turns out that being a chef is so awesome. Perhaps, after this great calamity, he should settle down and learn culinary skills. The next time I face these soul demons, I'll feel very confident. Also, don't Don't offend a chef. After all, food has to go into the stomach, and who knows if there's anything wrong with it. Why? The crown prince asked, swallowing as he looked at Bufong, who was putting his hands behind his back and tapping his fingers in the wok. Oh, why what? Bufong gave the crown prince a puzzled look as if he did not understand what he was asking. Why did these soul demons burn to death after eating the stinky tofu? Did you hide a fire in the stinky tofu? The crown prince's eyes widened. Is this chef so cunning? But I like it. He hid the fire in the stinky tofu. Bufong glanced at the crown prince and rolled his eyes. He thought the crown prince was a fool. Do I look like that kind of person? The corner of Bufong's mouth twitched. Aren't you? Then why did these soul demons burn when they ate your stinky tofu? The crown prince asked, puzzled. He was really puzzled. Bufong's hand shook. A splash rang out. The oil splashed, and a piece of stinky tofu, which had been fried black and gold, floated out of the wok. Streams of light could be seen flashing over it, making it look extremely gorgeous. The stinky tofu floated in front of the crown prince. The crown prince's eyes widened as he looked at the stinky tofu up close. On the surface of the stinky tofu, there were specks of black and golden light circulating. The remaining oil was still bubbling on the surface. This is my special stinky tofu. I used the best ingredients to make the tofu and hid it in a place of ice and fire to ferment, causing the will of ice and fire to flow into the stinky tofu, creating a stench that penetrates deep into one's soul. Although it smells stinky, the taste of the stinky tofu is incomparably delicious. I dare say that this stinky tofu is one of the most delicious dishes I've ever cooked. Bufong said, I only have 81 pieces of stinky tofu. I didn't want to waste them here, but I didn't expect that the Titan Divine Dynasty would turn into a kingdom of soul demons. Stinky tofu smells bad, but tastes delicious. The more delicious a dish is, the more deadly it is to these soul demons. The stinky tofu smells bad, but the smell of the top-grade stinky tofu is so strong that they can't resist it at all. From the inside out, they directly turn into nothingness. They were burned by fire. That was the fire in their hearts, not mine. I won't take the blame for this. Bufong said a lot in one breath. The crown prince was dumbfounded by what he had said. I can't believe it. How did these soul demons die? They were killed by the stinky tofu. This was the first time he had seen such a way of death. Plop! The last piece of stinky tofu shot out. Those soul demons were already very afraid of stinky tofu. However, they could not resist the temptation of it. The last piece was eaten by a soul demon. Like the other soul demons, the soul demon began to burn from his stomach until he was completely burned into nothingness. To humans, it was a top-grade delicacy, but to these soul demons, it was poison. The crown prince did not know what to say anymore. Bufong snapped his fingers. Immediately, the oil in the wok dissipated. Come, let's go to the divine temple, Bufong said. The crown prince suddenly came to his senses. The soul demons were still immersed in the temptation of the stinky tofu, while the two numbered soul demons, the two keepers, were resisting it. They did not want to be burned to death like the other soul demons. Of course, because their levels were higher, their resistance to the stinky tofu was much stronger. They felt that this chef was too cunning. It was such a delicious thing, but when they tasted it, it was so disgusting. They had to tear this chef to pieces. They're running away, one of the keepers said coldly. The soul demons in the surroundings woke up immediately. After them, rumble. The sound of something piercing through the air rang out. The next moment, one figure after another shot out at high speed. All of them were heading toward the Divine Temple's tower. Bufong and the Crown Prince were very fast. In just a flash, they had arrived near the Divine Temple. They landed on the ground and looked up at the tower. They could not see the end of the tower at a glance, and it had many floors. This tower is the center of the Divine Temple, and only those with the imperial bloodline can open it, the Crown Prince said. He took a deep breath. Then, he glanced over his shoulder. The soul demons had caught up. Although Bufong's stinky tofu had killed many soul demons, there were just too many of them. Has the Titan Divine Dynasty really turned into a paradise for soul demons? Damn it. The Crown Prince's eyes were a little red. Why is the Divine Emperor not doing anything in this situation? Or perhaps even the Divine Emperor has become a soul demon? Impossible. The Divine Emperor is the strongest existence in the chaotic universe. How could he be devoured by these soul demons? Open the entrance and go in. Quick, Bufong said. He could not help but frown when he saw that the Crown Prince was still feeling sad. The Crown Prince came to his senses and wiped a tear from the corner of his eye. Yes, now is not the time to be sad. What I need to do now is to survive. He raised his hand and pressed his palm on the bronze door of the tower. The Crown Prince immediately felt the blood in him boil. Rumble, the bronze door trembled and slowly opened. Stay here. You can't escape. One soul demon after another closed in. Two keepers approached at high speed. They were the top existences among the numbered soul demons. The temple guards' eyes shone with a scarlet light. Their gazes were fixed on the Crown Prince and Bufong, who were standing in front of the tower. You want to enter the divine temple? Roar. One of the keepers roared. The next moment, a huge halberd appeared in his hand. Barbaric glyphs surged on the keeper's arm. The halberd shot out in an instant. Die! Bufong landed on the ground. He stood in front of the tower. His eyes were indifferent. He raised his hand, and the power of the law surged. 4 wheels of law emerged, causing his aura to rise steadily. Even though he was only a demigod, at this moment his fighting prowess was close to that of a top-grade god king. Rumble. The halberd smashed down. Bufong's power of the law turned into a shield and blocked the halberd. Bam! 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 The ground around the tower exploded in an instant. Rumbling sounds rang out incessantly. The ground was covered with rubble and rocks. The Crown Prince shuddered. Open the door. I'll guard it. Just when he was about to despair, Bufong's calm voice rang out. The Crown Prince took a deep breath. Open it. Open it now. The Crown Prince's eyes turned red. His blood began to boil. His bloodline resonated, and the door of the pagoda slowly opened. Rumble. The 2 temple guardians looked at each other. After that, numerous bone spears made of insect scales emerged and shot toward Bufong and the Crown Prince like arrows. Bufong frowned. The power of 4 laws was quite a good addition to his strength. That made Bufong's combat power soar. However, he was only comparable to a temple guard. If he had used the divine flame, he might have been able to suppress a single guardian. But there were 2 of them. Bufong exhaled. His divine consciousness surged. Suddenly, divine flame spewed out, boom. Silver flames blazed as a scorching heat spread out, causing the temperature of the entire world to rise rapidly. The divine fire was under the control of Bufong's divine sense. They turned into flaming lotuses that shot towards the 2 temple guardians. Boom! A collision erupted. A violent explosion occurred in the void. Creak! The door to the tower opened. Come in, the Crown Prince said happily. He was the first to step into the divine temple. Bufong turned his head and followed him. Boom! The divine flame went out. The temple guardian's halberd fell again and smashed hard on the door of the tower. However, the tower did not budge, no matter how strong the halberd was. The 2 guardians landed on the ground and roared like ferocious beasts. Black shadows appeared behind them. Behind them, black shadows emerged and rushed toward the tower. Rumble. An invisible restrictive power began to spread out. The 2 temple guardians were knocked flying away. Numerous soul demons hovered around him. Their eyes were also bursting with scarlet, and a terrible aura was spreading from them. Soul 6, what should we do? The temple keeper turned his head and looked at his companion beside him. Soul 6 was also a temple guardian. He took a deep breath, and the insect scales on his face slowly receded. In the end, it took the form of an old man. It's okay. They can't run away. When Soul 13 comes, they will all die, especially that chef. Soul 13 will never spare him. Soul 6 said. He was now 30% convinced of Soul 13, because he was the one who had the best chance of becoming a soul overlord among all the invading soul demons. The news that the Titan divine dynasty had turned into a kingdom of soul demons could not be kept a secret for long. But it did not matter. As long as Soul 13 became a soul overlord, the immortal spirit divine dynasty and the shy divine dynasty would be slaughtered by them. At that time, this chaotic universe would truly become their paradise. At that time, it would not be a kingdom of soul demons, but a soul demon universe. At the thought of that, the corners of Soul 6's mouth curved upward. Besides, once Soul 13 becomes a soul overlord, he will be able to contact the soul god. When the soul god makes a move, we soul demons will surely win. When Soul 6 thought of the legendary supreme soul god, he couldn't help but feel excited. The tower glowed brilliantly. However, surrounded by soul demons, the light looked a little dim. In the palace, the Titan Divine Emperor slowly rose to his feet. So strong. Is this the pride of a divine emperor? What a ridiculous pride. The Titan Divine Emperor grinned, and a cold, ferocious look came over his face. Soon, I'll completely devour the Titan Divine Emperor's soul. When that time comes, I'll become a soul overlord. Who can stop me? Humans are nothing but food for us soul demons. Rumble. The Titan Divine Emperor walked forward with his hands clasped behind his back. He took a step forward. The gates of the palace burst open with a rumble. Then, he took another step forward. His eyes seemed to be bursting with thousands of dazzling lights. Then, like a stream of light, he shot forward in a flash. Before long, he arrived on a cloud. With his hands clasped behind his back, he looked down at the tower in the distance. The corners of his mouth curved into a grim smile. That chef is in this tower? This chef can't run away, and neither can the curse goddess. Hovering in the sky, Soul 13 burst out laughing. The next moment, his body grew to 100,000 feet tall. He was indomitable. I'll use the Titan Divine Dynasty's means to deal with him. Titan Divine Emperor, aren't you proud? Let's see how you're going to be proud when your divine dynasty is reduced to ruins in your hands. The Titan Divine Emperor stood upright and let out a deafening roar. His voice shook the soul. Then, a huge palm the size of a house slapped toward the tower. Inside the Divine Temple's tower, the bronze door slammed shut. The Crown Prince panted violently. In just a few seconds, his forehead was covered with cold sweat. He leaned against the door and slowly slid to the ground. Is this your divine temple and land? Bufang's voice rang out. The Crown Prince was stunned, and he raised his head. At this moment, his pupils constricted. Placed in the divine temple were the life lamps of the experts of the various clans in the Titan Divine Dynasty. The corridor of life lamps, which used to be gorgeous in the past, was now dark. Only a few of them were flickering slowly. The Crown Prince felt as if his throat was being grabbed by a hand. Suddenly, his mind trembled, and he jerked his head up to look at the life lamp at the top of the corridor. There, a life lamp was shining brightly. Looking at the shining life lamp, the Crown Prince breathed a sigh of relief. The Divine Emperor of the Titan Divine Dynasty is still alive. At this moment, the Crown Prince suddenly felt like crying with joy. The Divine Emperor's life lamp? Bufang paused. Looking at the bright life lamp, he felt relieved. Perhaps the Titan Divine Emperor is really alive. The Titan Divine Dynasty can still be saved. Swoosh! Bufang exhaled, expelling the suppressed breath in his heart. However, as Bufang exhaled, his eyes widened. The wick of the swaying Divine Emperor's life lamp swayed a little. With a puff, it was extinguished. Chapter 1552. The life lamp was swaying, and the flame in its wick was burning slowly. However, it was extinguished so abruptly. It was as if Bufang had blown out the flame with a puff of his breath. Bufang's face froze, and he felt a little embarrassed. The atmosphere in the air seemed to have become very quiet. Are life lamps so fragile? It can't be real, can it? The Crown Prince's eyes slowly widened. He looked at Bufang, then at the life lamp. He opened his mouth, but did not know what to say. "Don't worry, I'll light it for him," Bufong said after thinking for a moment. Then he raised a hand and flicked his finger. A silver divine flame shot out. He floated in front of the Godemperor's life lamp, intending to light the extinguished Godemperor's life lamp. However, no matter how the divine flame burned, the life lamp went out. Bufong's face turned a little black. "Can't I get rid of this blame? The life lamp has gone out. The divine emperor is dead." The crown prince was a little stunned. He did not know what to say. He suddenly felt a little cold. Was this still the Titan divine dynasty he was once familiar with? The whole divine dynasty had turned into a horrible hell on earth, a paradise for soul demons' despair. An aura of despair filled the crown prince's heart, and he couldn't even breathe. My condolences." Bufong thought for a moment and decided to comfort the crown prince. He felt that the extinguishing of the life lamp might have something to do with him, if he had not exhaled that breath. There were originally thousands of life lamps in the life lamp corridor, but only a few were left, and they were still going out. Those life lamps were the life lamps of the monstrous geniuses of the clan. It was just as the temple guard had said. As the keeper had said, these geniuses were just pigs raised by the soul demons. Now they were all killed. The crown prince shuddered when he thought of how long he had survived among the soul demons. Bufong followed behind the crown prince. The latter kept walking, and soon he came to the center of the pagoda. The space inside the pagoda was very large. Clearly, it was built with the power of the law of space. It looked a little like the divine power of Mount Meru. Boom! Bufong and the crown prince, who were standing in the middle of the tower, suddenly felt the tower tremble. The crown prince panicked. "What happened?" The crown prince said. "Someone should be attacking the tower," Bufong said. The crown prince's face was ashen. As expected, the God Temple Tower couldn't hold on for long. He had to die, but he didn't want to die. Now, he was the Titan Divine Dynasty's only hope. He wanted to get out alive. DZ held his head with both hands. He was called a monster, but he had never felt such despair before. "I want to live. I want to inherit the Titan's glory." As the Titan Crown Prince thought about it, tears involuntarily flowed down his cheeks. In the face of such a huge change, it was already not bad that he didn't collapse. Bufong took a deep breath and wanted to exhale. However, halfway through vomiting, he suddenly recalled the extinguished life lamp of the God Emperor and frowned. He raised his hand to his mouth and exhaled deeply. "My condolences. You have to stay strong and live on," Bufong said. Then he looked up and glanced around. The Titan's heart is located in the Divine Temple, so it should be in this tower. But where should it be? Bufong frowned. "That's right. I want to live. I must live. I want to destroy all the soul demons. I want to avenge all the people of the Titan Divine Dynasty. This is my mission, because I am a crown prince." The crown prince looked up, his eyes red. "You are the best." Bufong nodded. "So, I want to live." The crown prince looked at Bufong. His hopeful eyes made Bufong feel a little sorry for him. "I know you have a way to save me. There must be a way, but you need to tell me the location of the Titan's heart," Bufong said after thinking for a moment. Only by finding the Titan's heart could Bufong complete his mission and have a chance to leave the Titan Divine Dynasty. The Titan's heart? The crown prince paused. Then he constricted his body in pain. Yes, he needed to get the Titan's heart. It was the symbol of the Titan Divine Dynasty, and he must not let it fall into the hands of the soul demons. "It's on the top floor. The Titan's heart is on the top floor," the crown prince said. After that, he frantically climbed toward the top floor of the Divine Temple Tower. The steps of the tower were spiral and had no handrails. They spun all the way up. No one knew how many steps there were. Bufong and the crown prince ran up the steps at full speed. Rumble. The Divine Temple Tower was shaking violently. It was the result of a violent attack. The crown prince's heart was trembling as the tower shook. The buildings around the Divine Temple had long been completely reduced to ruins. Then, the 100,000 feet tall body descended. With a stomp, the buildings collapsed. It was the body of the Titan Divine Emperor, which was tens of thousands of feet tall. The barbaric glyphs on his body exuded a mysterious aura. The huge palm slapped at the tower again and again, as if it was going to break the tower's waist. Soul 13 was laughing wildly. He could feel that the Titan Divine Emperor's will was weakening, almost like the flame of a candle that was about to go out at any time. This made him feel more and more delighted. Soon, I'm about to become a soul overlord. He grabbed the Divine Temple Tower with one hand and tried to uproot it from the ground like a spring onion. Rumble, the Divine Temple was shaking. The buildings were constantly cracking. Restrictive spells and arrays were flashing, protecting the Divine Temple. Around the Titan Divine Emperor, one soul demon after another was watching feverishly. Crack. The walls of the Divine Temple Tower were cracking, and cracks began to appear. Suddenly, the Titan Divine Emperor dropped to his knees. His eyes, which were as huge as a house, stared at the Divine Temple Tower. Through the crack in the Divine Temple Tower, he saw two figures galloping in the Divine Temple Tower. The corners of the Titan Divine Emperor's mouth curled upward, and an eerie aura spread. He found them. Rumble. In the pagoda of the Divine Temple, Bu Fong frowned. The restrictive spells around him seemed to be breaking. The people attacking from the outside were actually able to forcefully break through the restriction with their great strength. There was a cracking sound. Bu Fong looked over his shoulder. Around the tower, a crack emerged as if a thunderbolt had ripped through the sky, looking extremely hideous. It was huge, and powerful air currents kept spreading out of it. The spatial arrays in the Divine Temple Tower were cracking and collapsing. The Crown Prince and Bu Fong sped up, flying toward the top. Rumble, all of a sudden, Bu Fong felt a chill run down his spine. It was the coldness of being stared at by a savage beast. Bu Fong turned his head and looked at the crack. There, a pair of huge eyes peered through the crack. That playful gaze, that greedy gaze. Found you, Rumble. The tower began to shake. What's that? The Crown Prince shuddered. Soul demons, Bu Fong said. Although they were in a critical moment, the Crown Prince could not help but want to roll his eyes. He knew those were soul demons. Oh, they should be the soul demons who have occupied the Divine Emperor's body. Bu Fong analyzed. Occupied the Divine Emperor's body. The Crown Prince jerked his head around and met Soul 13's gaze. His eyes were full of rage. Damn soul demons. You kill my father. I won't let you off. Roar. However, as soon as the Crown Prince finished shouting, facing the crack, the enormous figure let out a roar. The whole tower began to shake. The Crown Prince was taken aback. We're almost at the top, Bu Fong said. The two of them sped forward like two beams of light. The stairs of the tower under their feet were crumbling. It was a race against time. Rumble. The speed of the two suddenly increased. In a flash, they rushed into the glowing room on the top floor. That's where the Titan's heart is, the Crown Prince said. I've never seen the Titan's heart either, Bu Fong nodded. The two of them went into the glowing door. Rumble. It seemed to have become a separate space. The vast starry sky was filled with swirling rivers of stars, flashing with thousands of rays of light. Where is the Titan's heart? Bu Fong asked, somewhat confused. The Crown Prince was also stunned. How could he know where the Titan's heart was? He had never been here before. Father knows. How would I know? The Crown Prince was almost in tears. Is there really no hope? Rumble. The space on the top floor did not remain stable for long. Suddenly, it trembled, and the curtain of stars shook violently as if it was about to be torn apart. A crack appeared in the starry sky. Within the crack, a pair of scarlet eyes locked onto them. It was as if a hunter had targeted his prey. You can't run away. A cold voice seemed to come from the distant sky. It sent chills down their spines. A crack had appeared in the starry sky. The stable curtain of stars dissipated in an instant, revealing its original appearance. Bu Fong and the Crown Prince were slightly taken aback. They looked at the position in the curtain of stars. Over there, the horned silk was densely packed, resembling a long, winding dragon. It was so dense that it blotted out the sky. So, this should be the legendary Titan's heart, right? Bufong looked at the crown prince with a slightly strange expression. No wonder the system said, "I'll understand when I get here." No wonder there's a temporary task about getting the Titan's heart. Because the Titan's heart turned out to be a ginseng. There were strange patterns drawn on the ginseng. It looked extremely mysterious. The crown prince froze for a moment, then swallowed. Maybe it is. The crown prince was a little uncertain, for he really didn't know that the Titan's heart was actually a ginseng. Is it for eating? Bam! The crack grew bigger and bigger. Its huge eyes were full of ferocity. It was obvious that the eyeball had also seen the Titan's heart. Crack! Crack! His fingers reached into the crack and pulled the pagoda apart. The pagoda was about to be broken. What should we do? The crown prince panicked. Can the Titan's heart save the Titan divine dynasty? The crown prince looked at Bufong as if he was grasping at the last life-saving straw. It can save you. Bufong thought for a moment and said. As soon as he finished speaking, a deafening rumble rang out. Terrible fluctuations came from all directions. The top of the pagoda was lifted in an instant. The restrictive spells of the pagoda fell apart in an instant. A huge figure looked down from above, staring at Bufong with scarlet eyes. Stinky Chef, I've finally found you. That you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.